So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 1, what if Naruto has legendary Tenseigan eyes, which is also known as reincarnation eye. And the Tenseigan is bloodline power of the Otsutsuki that only a few known members seem to possess. This eye can be awakened once the Byakugan is coupled with strong Otsutsuki blood. So far, Homura Otsutsuki and Toneri Otsutsuki are the only two known users of this eye. But what could happen if Naruto also had that eye? But before we start, please do 200 likes and subscribe to the channel. And press the bell icon on if you don't want to miss the next part. Now let's start the story. Hyuga Heihachi was having a midday stroll on the day of the QB festival and thought nothing would happen today. He didn't believe today, the 6th anniversary of the QB attack, would be anything special. He didn't have even the smallest idea that today would forever change his life, his clan, and Konoha. He was completely wrong and in for a surprise. As he made his way through the streets of Konoha, idly noticing different stands with QB and Yandere-themed games, treats, and the people setting up said stands, he heard a mob gathering and became curious. Usually, he wouldn't care, but he heard the name Uzumaki, and so he checked it out. Uzumaki, that was a name he hadn't heard since his wife's best friend, Kushina. Hitomi, Kushina and Uchiha Mikoto were inseparable, until, of course, Kushina died 6 years ago, and then Hitomi 3. While he wouldn't usually care about the Uzumaki, his uncle and the eldest of the Hyuga elders, Hyuga Hito, his former lover was in Uzumaki Miko, granddaughter of Uzumaki Mito, the wife of the Shodaime Hokage. Hito had always said that there was a chance of Miko being pregnant during the Yuzu massacre, and if she had somehow escaped and given birth, well, that would be great. A Hyuga descended from the Uzumaki and Senju. That would definitely help his clan. So he discreetly followed the mob, wondering why so many people would hate in Uzumaki. Didn't they realize how important that clan had been for Konoha? Stupid civilians. The Uzumaki had done so much for this village. They had given the Shodaime Hokage the seal arrays needed to create Jinchuriki, designed the defense seals on the walls that absorbed chakra to defend against jutsu, and keep people from walking up them. They had helped much in the First and Second Shinobi World Wars, before their near extinction during said war. The Uzumaki were also the original holders of the 5 most famous contracts of Konoha. They gifted the snake, toad, slug, ape, and dog contracts to Konoha as part of the alliance, and they went out to clans. The Sarutobi gained the ape and toad, which was later gifted to Jiraiya by Hiruzen. The Senju got the slug, the Haddock got the dog, and the Hibi got the snake. That clan sure were slippery as snakes, and with their Dokuten, poison release, as well as immunity to poison, it was no wonder they received it. Too bad Orochimaru had to take it after their near destruction during the Third Shinobi World War. The few left weren't so bad. But those were only the tip of the iceberg of the Uzumaki's influence in Konoha. The Ashi was broke from his thoughts when he saw the mob had surrounded a boy, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy with 3 whiskers on each cheek, wearing a black shirt with a Uzumaki spiral on its back and black shorts. They were throwing things at him from all sides, stones, glass shards, shuriken, kunai, anything they could get their hands on really, even trash on the floor. It was just... He was dodging all of them, even ones that should be out of his range of sight, rather easily. Everywhere except the Byakugan's blind spot, he mentally yelled. From his vantage point, Heihachi activated his Byakugan and suddenly, the boy Uzumaki Naruto the Jinchuriki. His eyes lost their azure tint. Replacing them was a pair of very pale eyes rimmed red on the outermost edge of the iris, and rimmed purple on the innermost edge. The only thing was the vein bulges of the Byakugan were absent. Besides that though, it was obvious to Heihachi that he had the Hyuga's eyes. Could this be? Is he really? I must find out who put a Jinjutsu on the boy's eyes. Only one person would do that. Heihachi finished his thoughts as he saw one of the civilians take out a rather rusty tanto and rush the 6-year-old, ready to strike. In a swirl of leaves and dust, suddenly Heihachi was there, the blade caught in 2 of his fingers. The crowd was silent as they stared at one of the most powerful men in all of Konoha. Heihachi-sama, one of them spoke, almost inaudibly. Leave, all of you, before I punish you for the Third's law. He commanded, and like cockroaches in light, they suddenly scattered, leaving Heihachi with a barely conscious boy. The Hyuga clan had picked him up and soon, in another shunshin, was in front of the Hokage's secretary. Is Hokage-sama busy? Heihachi asked her. She shook her head, not noticing Naruto in his arms, and signaled he could go. The Hyuga sneered at her lack of respect and lack of vigilance for enemies. Idiot civilians. He thought with disdain as he knocked on Hiruzen's office door. Come in. The cheery voice of the aged Hokage spoke from within. The Ashi didn't need anything else to tell him, and he walked in, setting Naruto down in a vacant chair where he fell asleep, before looking at the Hokage. Hiruzen looked surprised at Heihachi's arrival with his grandson figure. Hokage-sama, why does Uzumaki Naruto have the Byakugan? Hyuga compound. One Hyuga Hito, an elder of the clan, sat in meditation within his quarters. He looked the very definition of regal. Hito wore the custom-fitted robes of light blue that was the unofficial uniform of the Hyuga elders, with a Hyuga flame on its right shoulder and a Uzumaki spiral on its left. His unactivated Byakugan had a light violet tint to them, and his regal and only slightly wrinkled face was framed by his shoulder-length black hair. If one were to look at his right hand, they would notice a ring of black gold with a ruby in the shape of the Uzumaki clan spiral on his index finger, a gift from his former lover, Uzumaki Maiko. Oddly enough, that's where his thoughts were at the moment. That was far from a surprise to anyone who knew the aged veteran of the Second and Third Shinobi World Wars though. No matter what he was doing, Hito generally had this look of sadness behind his eyes, the kind of sadness only losing your soulmate can produce. He wore a mask of cold indifference to hide the sadness, but it nevertheless showed up. Every single Hyuga older than 16 knew the reason for his pain. It all happened on a mission near the end of the Second Shinobi World War, back when Hito was still commander of the Anbu under his tiger mask, and the codename Tora. Iwa had captured one of Konoha's bases and held all the shinobi in Kinwaichi there as POWs, so the Niddame Hokage requested aid from the Niddame Yuzukage, Uzumaki Arashi. They granted it, sending his best Anbu to help in the joint mission. The leader was Uzumaki Maiko. Hito could still remember her every single day. She had the brightest red hair he'd ever seen, and eyes of the deepest violet. Her skin was always flawless from her Uzumaki healing, and her strikingly curvaceous figure was somehow fitted into a tight Anbu uniform, which he could see every curve, every part of her through. Her personality was very rough as well. She was stubborn, dominating and never backed down when she knew she was right. It infuriated him to no end. That of course meant that he was destined to fall for her. And fall he did. The entirety of the mission lasted 3 months. The Iwan Inn had the whole place locked up tight and never lost vigilance, not to mention they outnumbered the Anbu 5-1 with just their own Anbu. That didn't even count Iwa's Jounin and Chunin. So they waited for the perfect moment to strike when those shinobi had to go elsewhere to reinforce other areas of the country. In those 3 months, well, the first was rather dull. Hito and Maiko would constantly argue all the time over what they should do, when to strike, where to strike, how to strike. Then they cooled down after Maiko forced him into a drink in their camp. The sake was good, but her company was better. They talked all evening, and from that moment on, Hito was under the spell of the Uzumaki, the skill they had to make anyone their friend. That didn't last long though, as 2 short weeks later, after they both got drunk, Hito woke up to Maiko in his bed, naked. He was utterly perplexed, but not totally disagreeable with his predicament. It took them only 2 seconds of looking at each other, before the dominating Uzumaki smashed her lips on his, and they began another round. And another. Hito smiled as he remembered how he had told her once that the silencing seals she etched on every part of the camp were the only thing that allowed the other Anbu to sleep. She had retorted by saying betting that he couldn't make her break through them. He lost a bet, but he sure enjoyed what happened. In those short 6 weeks of being lovers, the two were inseparable, but all good things must come to an end, as they say. So when the mission ended successfully, Hito and Maiko parted very reluctantly. She gave him his Uzumaki ring, and he gifted to her a ring of silver with a black diamond on it, in the shape of the Hyuga flame, that had been in his family's possession for generations, passed down from father to son. It was a promise. Hito had told Maiko that he would request resignation after the war was over and move to Uzushio, as she couldn't leave her home being clan heiress and a probable candidate for Sandame Yuzukage. That was not to be, though. A mere 3 days after Hito got back, news traveled to Konoha of Uzushio's defeat at the hands of Iwa, Kumo and Kiri, and he never heard from her again. Hito feared the worst, and he withdrew into himself, immersing himself in training and suicide missions. He became cold and logical, even being offered a spot as Hiruzen's elder council, a position en route by Danzu, and he was begged to reconsider his resignation from the shinobi program, but he couldn't do it anymore. For the last 15 years, he's been one of the elders of the Hyuga clan, the voice of reason, that saw every possible result of a decision. Hito's meditation was interrupted as a knocking sounded from his door. Hito opened his eyes. "Come in." He allowed and in walked Hyuga Hiyashi as well as. "Hito, this is Uzumaki Naruto." Hiyashi introduced the young boy. He had sun-kissed spikes of golden hair, 3 whisker marks, tanned skin, wore a black shirt with a Uzumaki spiral on the back and black shorts. His most striking feature though was his eyes. They were pale violet, with a dark violet ring around his pupil, and rimmed crimson on the outer edge of his iris. "Son of Uzumaki Kushina," Hiyashi continued, and Hito noticed the similarities in the two's facial structure, and that hair. If he had azure eyes he could almost be the son of the Yondame, who the Hokage has informed me was the daughter of one Uzumaki. Hito studied the boy a bit more, and noticed something else. He held himself confidently, staring him down challengingly, almost like, "Maiko," Hito whispered. "Hi, Hito. That is not all. The Hokage has reason to believe his grandfather on his mother's side is you." Hito looked upon the young boy, a boy he knew was a Jinchuriki, and tears welled up in his eyes. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked in a tone that so screamed of challenge, just like his Maiko-chan used to. Hito's eyes shed tears of happiness for the first time in over almost 4 decades. "Because I'm finally seeing my grandson for the first time," Hito said with a sad smile, and Naruto's mouth opened. He began trembling immediately. "Why you're MIJ Jiji?" he asked as tears threatened to spill from the lonely Jinchuriki's eyes. With only a slight nod from Hito, he was suddenly tackled by the small, yet strong and swift, body of his 6-year-old grandson. It was a manner most unbefitting of a hyuga, but Hito could care less about protocol. He thought that his lover was dead when she had apparently given birth to his daughter. He never even would have guessed Kushina, all the time she came over, was his own blood. He never did anything for her a father should have done. He did do everything he could for her simply because she was in Uzumaki, like his dear Maiko-chan. He would not make the same mistake with his grandson. Naruto would be given the training he deserved, the love he deserved, the protection of Hito. Demon or no demon, Hito would love Naruto with the last of his years, however long that may be. 13-year-old Yuga Uzumaki Naruto sat in his academy class, coldly analyzing all around him. As usual, his Byakugan was active. He never turned it off, ever. With his insane reserves he never needed to, and his chakra always recovered after he slept. Since it was always on, people just thought that they were his usual eyes, and for some reason his veins never bulged when his Dojutsu was active. Hito Jiji said it was probably because of his Uzumaki DNA, and it altered his Kekai Genkai. That's why, even at the very front of the class, he could see Shikamaru sleeping, Sakura and Ino fawning over the brooding Sasuke, Choji munching on his ever-present potato chips, Kiba talking with his Ninken, Shino silent, and Hinata off alone staring at him. Naruto focused his attention on the only 2 friends he had in this class. To his left was the beautiful Kurama Yakumo, heiress to the Kurama clan. To his right was Fenakusu Daihi, heir to another minor clan, the Fenakusu clan that was famous for their natural affinity for fire, that allowed even academy students to perform C and B rank Kaiten techniques. He had inherited the full Kekai Genkai of the clan, much like both Yakumo and Naruto, which allowed him to perform even A rank techniques seamlessly, though he was limited to 3 or 4 of those, before he passed out from chakra exhaustion. He was wearing a dark red shirt under fishnet, black Anbu-style pants, shinobi sandals, and a wide-brimmed hat atop his head that was black with a red band going around the base of it and an injado on his right hip. Naruto himself was wearing something far different than when Hiyashi-sama had found him. He now had on black hakama pants, a loose-fitting black shirt, and shinobi sandals. His arms were covered in tattoos that acted as gravity, storage, and chakra suppression seals, the first to train his body, and the second to improve his already vast reserves, as well as refine his chakra control, which was already stellar because of Hito Jiji's intense training. Jiji's training. Flashback no jutsu. Began, Naruto. Hito ordered the 9-year-old blonde. Naruto scowled at his horrible performance and struck the tree once more with his palm. The chakra hit the tree and dented it once more, but no sign of rock was there, even though he was building up earth-natured chakra in his palm, just as Jiji said. Again, Naruto. Naruto pulled his palm back and charged more earth-natured chakra this time, ready to do it once more. Jiji is counting on me. He hasn't taught his Iwakin to any other person, and he says he never will. I have to do this. I can't fail Jiji, anyone but him. With a shout, Naruto tried again and again. No rocks were present on the tree. Before Hito could even say anything, he witnessed as his grandson went again and again and again. Each time nothing was happening, the chakra was being forced in the tree, but it wouldn't become stone. I will do it, Naruto stated with each palm strike. I will do it. 4 more strikes. His eyes showed a very un-Yuga-like fire, which was very Uzumaki-like. I will do it. He shouted this time and sent one final double palm thrust into the tree, letting loose a burst of earth chakra with it, before he promptly fell forward and passed out from physical exhaustion, as he had been up to this for the last 12 hours. Hito looked at the tree and smiled at his grandson, as he saw rock coating the bark in just the barest amounts. Turning on his Byakugan, he widened his eyes at seeing that the core of the tree was no longer living, but stone itself. Yes, you did it, young Naruto-kun, Hito said softly with pride. Flashback no jutsu, Kai. After that, he had begun the process of learning Hito Jiji's katas for the Iwakin, having already learned the basics of Juiken. His Jiji had told him that Iwakin was based mostly in Juiken, with a small amount of Goken mixed in there. Jiji's personal Taijutsu style was rather strange and ingenious. The user would, instead of forcing normal chakra, force earth-natured chakra into an opponent. This would result in 2 things. The first is that their chakra itself would become earth-natured, restricting their ninjutsu abilities for a short amount of time. The second result happened slowly. After a certain amount of time, depending on the amount of chakra inserted and number of strikes, the person themselves would actually temporarily lose mobility in their joints, slowly being paralyzed as their bones became stone for a short amount of time. Before Hitotsuki taught this to Naruto, he tested his affinities, and it was a surprise to say the least. His chakra paper split into 4 pieces, one turning to ash, one becoming damp, one crinkling, and one crumpling. He had an affinity to all 5 elements. Igi had this theory. The Uzumaki were known to have affinities to wind, lightning and water, while Hyuga almost always headed towards earth. And then the Kyuubi Yoko were known for their foxfire, so maybe the Kyuubi gave him that element as well. Naruto was born with a rare ability to use all 5 elements naturally. And so, Hito began his teachings of the Iwakin to Naruto. That wasn't all though. See, Uzumaki Maiko, Naruto's grandmother on one side, had given Hito 2 scrolls as a parting gift until they met again. Hito had told the blonde that she told him, the first contains a copy of my branch of the clan's Fuinjutsu, and the other contains theory on how to properly mold 2 elements into one, a sort of pseudo-sub-element, if you will. I want you to have these until we meet again. They are just copies of mine, but you deserve them anyways. I know that you can only use Doton, but maybe one day in Yuzu you can take on an apprentice, or you can even be our kid sensei. She smiled at this point brighter than the sun. Won't that be the day, Hito-koi? When we have some little pale-eyed Uzumaki to raise. Promise me that we'll be a family, you and me and the children we'll have, all together in one happy house. I promise, Maiko Haim. The Hyuga Uzumaki sighed as he remembered that. Hitotsuki, you deserved happiness with Maiko Bachan. He shook himself from those thoughts. From those scrolls though, Naruto had learned much Fuinjutsu, many that only an Uzumaki could hope to accomplish. Seals did run in their blood after all. That other scroll though, that was much more difficult, and Naruto had yet to get anywhere in any of them. He would need a teacher for them, for sure. Besides his failures though, Naruto had progressed rather nicely. He had mastered the intermediate katas of Iwakin and was well into the advanced ones. With Hito's help, he had even begun to design a variation on the other 4 elements. They were mostly just vague at this point, but he had gotten down how to use each one of the elements in basic Juiken katas, and even what effects they had. Heiken, the Fire Fist, turned the target's chakra to fire-natured chakra and slowly gave them 2nd and 3rd degree burns internally. Hazuken, the Wind Fist, turned the target's chakra to wind-natured chakra and sped up their chakra network, forcing their Tenketsu open, and caused them to actually waste chakra with each jutsu they used. Braken, the Lightning Fist, changed chakra to a lightning nature and paralyzed Tenketsu, as well as shot the nervous system, tricking the target's body into jumbling up movements. And lastly was Suken, the Water Fist, which changed chakra to a water nature and reversed the flow of said chakra with each strike of Tenketsu, confusing the opponent as well as making a useful tool to dispel Genjutsu on others. He had named them collectively the Tenseigan, the Nature Fists. He just hadn't completely completed them. Thus far, all 4 of the new styles were roughly based on the Juiken, and the only ones that were actually distinguishable from said Taijutsu style were the Kazuken and Suken. The former was much faster, and the latter required more flexibility. He would need to work more on all 4 if he was to ever create them. Perhaps he could look at other Taijutsu styles to meld with the Juiken, just as Hito had done for the Iwakin. It was worth a shot. Then he heard something from Yakumo that got his attention. What happens if we aren't on the same team? She asked, almost afraid. Naruto turned to her. Don't be silly, Kumo-chan. I already told you guys that the Hokage forms these teams specifically. I can already tell you how most of them will be made. It's pretty obvious he'll place Ino, Shikamaru and Choji with each other to be the next generation of Ino Shikacho trio. Hinata, Kiba and Shino will probably be a tracking team. And then there's Sasuke, the Rookie of the Year, Sakura, Rookie Kunoichi of the Year, and Sai, that weird kid who is dead last. He always makes teams like that. The rest of these kids besides us are civilians. And he won't upset the clans by making us fail because of being on one of those teams. It's foolproof, and you know it. Yeah, Kumo. He's right. Daihi agreed. When has Naruto's reasoning ever failed us? He's the smartest one out of the 3 of us. We'll be on one team. I suppose you're right, she sighed. I'm just worried is all. Well, don't be, Kumo-chan. The blonde said. And look, here comes Iruka-sensei and Mizuki-sensei to tell us our team placements. He pointed out just as they opened the door. Hello, class. Sadly this is our last time together for some of us, so why don't I just announce your team placements? Nah, Haruka said with a sad smile. Naruto was a bit sad too, since he was one of the few teachers that were nice to him. Mizuki, however, Naruto saw that silver-haired sensei scowl in his direction. That team had attempted to sabotage his test at every opportunity. A genjutsu on the written portion that the Byakugan easily saw through. Unbalanced kunai and rusty shuriken on the accuracy portion that only Naruto's practiced wind manipulation sharpening had saved. An attempt to make him lose on the taijutsu portion by pitting him against Sasuke the Uchiha's defeat had been swift when he couldn't blindside him. The ninjutsu portion was simple too. Mizuki had a genjutsu on the rulebook in Iruka's possession that stated only a regular bunshin was allowed, and Naruto was quickly able to disappoint him by performing said technique, which took an extreme amount of chakra control, thanks to his Juken training. The Chunin he was pissed. Team 7 will be consisted of Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Shimurasai. Naruto smirked at Kumo, who looked at him in a way that said fine, you were right. Team 8 will consist of Yuga Hinata, Aburame Shino, and Inuzuka Kiba. Team 9 is still active, so Team 10 will consist of Yamanaka Ino, Narashikamaru, and Akimichi Chouji. The two clan heirs and Naruto looked at Iruka. Finally Team 11 will consist of Uzumaki Naruto, Fenakusu Daihi, and Kurama Yakumo. Fine, I was wrong. Happy now? Yakumo asked, and the blonde of the group simply grinned like a madman. Very. Be back in 1 hour to meet your sensei. The first two jounin to arrive were Saratobi Asuma and Yuuhi Kurenai, who quickly picked up teams 8 and 10. Another 10 minutes Jeku arrived, coughing a little. Team 11, come with me. The Kurama and Fenakusu heirs as well as the blonde Yuga all stood and followed the sickly jounin out the door and up to the academy roof. The genin looked at their sensei, who coughed once before speaking. Why don't we, he coughed again, introduce ourselves? The three looked confused. Can you start, sensei? My name is Jeku. I like practicing kenjutsu and my girlfriend Uzuki Yugao. I dislike those who make fun of my cough and don't respect kenjutsu as a shinobi art. My hobbies include learning many sword styles and doing anything with Yu-chan. My dream is to be named a kenjutsu grandmaster like my own sensei was. Though a little hard because of his coughing, the genin did understand what he said. My name is Fenakusu Daihi. I like hanging out with my two friends and also learning more of my clan's ninkenjutsu. I don't like people who are too arrogant for their own good and water. Daihi shuddered. My hobbies are training and reading, I guess. My dream is to become the only Fenakusu clan head to master both aspects of the Fenakusu Kekai Jinkai. I'm Kurama Yakumo. I like hanging out with these two and training to prove my former sensei wrong. I don't like anyone who thinks someone can't do something because of something they were born with. My hobbies are drawing and training. My dream is to make the Kurama a major clan of Konoha. I am Uzumaki Yuga Naruto. I like to be around my two friends and learn from my Jiji. I don't like the way my clan treats the side branch and how some people can't tell the difference between a kunai and a scroll. My hobbies include creating my own taijutsu style and mastering things from both of my clans. My dream is to one day find other survivors of the Izushio massacre and reform the Uzumaki clan. Pei-8 regarded his potential squad with a small smile. They were best friends even before any kind of near-death missions to bring them closer. That would make the test a formality. Since the day is so late, why don't we meet up at Training Ground 19 at 8 tomorrow? The genin nodded and Hade left in a Konoha Shunshin, leaving the trio alone. Training Ground 19, 8 a.m. Hade appeared in a swirl of leaves to see his potential squad already here. Yakumo had a sketchbook in hand, Naruto was reading a rather sizable scroll, and Daihi was sharpening a chikudo made of white steel on one side, black on the other, with an onyx hilt in the shape of a phoenix, with its wings spread, and a ruby where its eye would be. He coughed and immediately had their attention. Naruto rolled up his scroll and it sealed within his robe. Yakumo put away her book and the chikudo sheathed with an audible click. Glad to see you are all here. The first thing you must know is that you aren't genin yet. The trio's eyes widened. The other exam merely was to see if you were eligible to take the real test. That exam is today. Pei-8 pulled out a single scroll with blue tips. There is a cavern here with a scroll exactly like this. You have 1 hour to bring it to me. Hajime. The three immediately were gone. It didn't even take 2 minutes to find the cave, thanks to Naruto's Byakugan. Once they did, the trio landed in front of it and saw torches lining the walls. Damn it. Naruto cursed. Seals all over this cave, guys. They block the jutsu from seeing through the walls. My Byakugan will work inside, but I won't be able to see past any walls. That's alright, Naruto-kun, Yakumo said with a smile. Let's just do this. Daihi pulled his shikudo out and they walked inside. It slopes down ahead, guys. The blonde stated. That can only mean we're approaching either an underground bunker or a set of caverns. Too bad we only have an hour. Come on, guys, it wouldn't be caverns. Daihi replied. Why would we only get an hour if it was caverns? Without a Dijutsu many Anbu couldn't even do that. Good point, Daihi-kun. Yeah, I can see a door up ahead. Definitely just an underground base. Who put it here though? They got to the door and saw it was steel and split down the middle. Over the entire thing were seals Naruto recognized as privacy seals to keep noise inside and keep spying out. What purpose would that serve though? This is the origin of my trouble seeing in here, Naruto said. We should probably be careful. Can you cancel out the seals, Naruto? Daihi asked. Yes, I have a tag I created to short out seals by sending an intercepting pulse of chakra outward, which screws up the whole matrix and forces it to be restarted. It's still a prototype though, and I haven't tested it for side effects. Well, consider this field test number 1, Yakumo said. Naruto sighed and pulled out a tag with the kanji for scramble on it said in a moderately complex array. He set it on the door and motioned everyone to step back. He coated his foot in earth chakra. Iwakan. Upheaval. He announced as he kicked into the ground to raise a wall from the cave stone floor. He then held a ram seal. Scramble seal. Activate. Immediately the others felt the large chakra pulse, and were glad that wall set some sort of buffer, because the chakra that did escape sent them flying back several feet. Note to self. Lessen scramble seal chakra output. Naruto mumbled. You guys okay? Sure thing. Daihi said as he stood and dusted himself. If I said my butt hurt and my hair is ruined, would I sound too much like Ino and Sakura? Yakumo asked as she also stood. Not unless you started chazzing Ichiha-sama around for a date. Naruto replied and studied the result of the seal. Nearly on par with one of my version 3 explosive seals, and it seems it doesn't scramble elemental chakra. That may be a kink to work out. Can you see through the door? Daihi asked. That brought Naruto from his musing and he looked inside, but his tri-colored Byakugan widened. We may have a problem, he said. The scroll is being guarded. No problem. We can team up on them. The guard is a summons. Well, Daihi's got his Sun Phoenix contract. I got the Kitsune contract. Yakumo pointed out. The guard is a giant spider. At least as big as Chouji times 2. He's got the scroll in his web. Perhaps a strategy is in order. Daihi suggested and they nodded. But Pei-8 sat in a lotus position with his sword in his lap as the timer ticked down to 45 minutes. Thanks again for the help, Genma. That spider summons should test them well. Sure thing, Hate. I may not use it much, but my 2 cents contract is useful. If your team is supposed to be capture, retrieval, escort and courier, they may as well have some experience now. I plan to have them be all around, actually. They could easily make an assault or support team too. Hate didn't cough. A fact known only to Genma, Yugao and the Hokage was that his cough was an act to get enemies to drop their guard on him. He only told those he trusts the most. That is, if they pass. If they pass. Hade agreed. Back with the Genin hopefuls. Iwakan. Crushing blow. Naruto shouted and slammed his fist into the steel doors which shot off their hinges and into the room, one smashing into the spider's left side. It scurried back, limping slightly. The creature stood 3 feet above the Genin with a mouth dripping with poison, 8 eyes situated on its head. The back of this menacing summon was brownish with lighter and darker shades swirled of that color swirling in an intricate spiral. It dashed forward with impressive speed at Naruto, but Daihi quickly got in front. Grand dive of the phoenix. His sword became coated in white flames as he performed a jump slash that the arachnid dodged neatly. Naruto used another of his grandfather's moves. Iwakan. Grand divide. His fist hit THR cave floor and a fissure formed under the spider, and it fell through. It'll come back. Daihi burned the web and get the damn scroll. The usually calm Hyuga was stressed as this was his first real fight. And come on, it's a freaking spider the size of an Akimichi. Daihi swung his sword, and embers jumped to the web. Spitfire of the phoenix. Quickly Akumo then focused on channeling chakra into her sketchpad to create a genjutsu where no flames touched the scroll, and Daihi caught it while Naruto watched the crevice. The little-known fact of Naruto's Byakugan was that it differed from other Hyuga in that he could both see in the dark and see differences between elemental chakras. The night vision aspect caused his eyes to become pale crimson, while the other made his eyes turn pale violet. You got it? Naruto asked. Yeah. Then let's get the hell out of here. That thing is extremely angry. He replied and performed a few hand seals. Uzumaki barrier seal. He slammed his hands to the ground, and a light blue energy wall covered the crevice, just as the spider ran into it. The trio ran. How long will that hold? Yakumo wondered aloud. 2 minutes if we're lucky. And if we're not? Daihi asked. Just then they heard the skittering of a scurrying spider. We're not. Naruto replied and pulled out many kunai before channeling wind, fire and lightning chakra into them. Each one became coated in flames and sparks, as well as became extremely sharp before he threw them. 2 hit the charging bug, and it made a noise the Hyuga couldn't quite describe, but was definitely angry. Exoskeleton, Rudo. Daihi pointed out. They kept running and Daihi slashed downward. Rage of the demon. Black fire shot off in a crescent arc that the spider simply dodged by dashing to a wall and crawling along that. Think Naruto mumbled before he widened his eyes. Daihi, Yakumo, when you summon exactly what happens. Well, you have to make a blood offering, usually by biting your thumb, Yakumo said. Then you make the hand seals for the summoning jutsu. When you slam your hand onto a flat surface, the blood spreads in the summoning seal. And damn phoenixes always leave in smoke when they're done. Never nice to me, Daihi complained. That was all Naruto needed as he began tying tags to a few kunai. What are you doing? Yakumo asked. The summoning seal is very limited. It can either be one or two way. One way is simple and only requires the one being summoned to have a marker to target, and they simply use something akin to the kawarimi or shunshin to get to it only with more chakra. A two-way works sort of the same, but the one summoned has only a set amount of chakra, and once that is used up or the flow is changed. Naruto quickly turned and tossed 4 kunai that stuck inside the spider's back and kept running as he held the ram seal. 4-point scramble seal. Activate. The trio turned to look at the giant cloud of smoke in the cave. As they reached the mouth of said cave, they are sent back. Fuinjutsu Theory 101. But Hayate looked at his timer after Hayate left, announcing the summons had left. That meant either the genin found a way to beat it or Sensei. He turned his head to see the trio arriving and smiled. Besides looking a little bruised and sweating, with a possibly incurable case of minor arachnophobia, they were just fine, with 2 minutes to spare. Hayate took the scroll from them and opened it, nodding to himself. Congratulations, you are now Kanahagakure Genin Squad 11. We'll meet here tomorrow at 7 am for training. Do not be late. You are dismissed. The trio nodded as Hayate left in a swirl of leaves before collapsing to the floor comically as soon as he left. Are we all agreed Hayate-sensei is a maniac for making 3 academy students go through that? Yakumo asked. Agreed, the other two said before all 3 new genin passed out as their adrenaline left their systems. Training Ground 19, 1 week after exam. Hayate stood in one place equal distance from Funakusu Daihi and Hyuga Uzumaki Naruto. Kurama Yakumo was off to the side. Hayate coughed once and then held up a single hand and let it fall down before jumping back next to Yakumo. This was the signal for the 2 shinobi in training to begin. In a burst of speed, Naruto channeled lightning chakra to his feet and dashed forward. Daihi saw this and immediately drew his sword, the legendary Mken of his clan's main family. His shakudo shone in the sunlight as it was enveloped in twin swirls of black and white flames to create a double helix of blaze-release chakra. Spite fire of the phoenix. Daihi slashed his blade, and Naruto's eyes widened before he channeled water chakra into his throat and spat a stream of water to put out the embers, having to stop his movement to retain focus. Daihi took the opportunity to coat his feet in phoenix fire and dashed forward before aiming a spinning kick for his opponent's head. He saw the grin his friend wore and cursed. Iwakin. Upheaval. A wall rose upright into his midsection and sent him flying a few feet before he landed on his feet. He knew his ribs were possibly bruised, but otherwise he was fine. Iwakin. Grand Divide. As soon as he heard that, Daihi jumped up high and charged a small amount of his Kekai Genkai's chakra into his feet. Blaze release. Rocket Jutsu. He yelled and white flames burst from his feet and allowed him to remain airborne long enough to land away from the crevice and turned only to find Naruto in front of him. Daihi ducked the first 3 palm strikes and then jumped back before slashing down. Black Crescent. A slash of hellfire shot forward to the hyuga. Naruto jumped to the left of it quickly and tossed 3 kunai with tags attached at Daihi. 3-point explosive seal. Activate. He announced and Daihi tried to jump above it only for another kunai to pass above and below, just as he heard Naruto say, 2-point chakra draining barrier seal. Activate. A double-layered globe of purple light surrounded him, and before he could regret his mistake, Daihi was out cold from chakra exhaustion. Hayate caught the boy before he fell to the floor and announced Naruto was the winner. 1 week later, Hayate stood before his team with a small smile. After 2 weeks of your spars, I have come up with a schedule for you 3 to train. By now the 3 barely noticed his coughing and took it in stride. The Jumnin paused before continuing. There is only one of me and you 3 have much different styles. Even though I can help Daihi the most, you 2 will not be ignored. Only a worthless Jumnin sensei would do something like that. What will we learn then, sensei? Yakumo asked. I will help Naruto in lightning manipulation, since it is my affinity, and Yakumo, I want you to learn genjutsu that don't require your sketch pad. You will one day surpass Ikikuranai in that art. She nodded. We will begin tomorrow in training because now we have something more important, the genin groaned. Today's D rank. After D rank, Hyuga compound. I'm back, Chichi. Naruto announced as he got to the building Hito's branch of the main house Hyuga stayed in, aka Hito and Naruto. It was a 4-bedroom building in the traditional Japanese style made entirely of wood. The blonde made his way to the back of the house, as that's where the training ground belonging to his grandfather was located behind the house. Back there he saw the old man who took him in performing the pinnacle of Iwakan, a move which got him the moniker of Chikadorga no Hito the Earth Dragon. He was crouched down with both fists pressed onto the floor before he slowly rose, and one hand his left became rigid and straight as he glided it down his right arm, and then his fist was pressed to his palm, and both pressed to his chest as he inhaled before punching out with his right fist from 10 feet away from where the dummy was. Earth Dragon's Tyrant Killer. The announced as a dragon of pure stone emerged from his fist and shot forward, causing the wooden dummy to erupt in splinters. Naruto was in awe just as he was any time he saw the move. It was downright scary how powerful it was. It was one of the final 3 moves of Iwakan, part of the Grandmaster Katas. He was nowhere near those as he had barely gotten into the advanced ones. If Grandmaster was S rank, advanced was high C rank to mid B rank. He was almost a Chunin level user to Hito's Cage level mastery. And he still had to make 4 more styles. Naruto shook his head before walking to the old man he respected even more than Hiashi-sama or Hokage-sama. Hey Jiji. Maybe you should just quit. Your age is messing you up. I mean, that tyrant killer was much smaller than the one I saw last month. Hito turned to his grandson with a smile as he ruffled his hair. And I can still beat you into next week, Gaki. Don't forget that. The two grinned at each other before Hito pulled 2 scrolls from his robe sleeve and handed them to his grandson. Why don't we start up on these from the Juken? They'll help with all your other styles, trust me. Just don't tell Hiashi Gaki. Hito had a conspiratorial grin on his face. Naruto gaped as he saw the Junin level moves his grandfather would teach him. Jiji, are you sure? Of course. No grandson of mine will be beaten by anyone. You've got the pride of the 2 greatest clans ever on your shoulders. The Senju and Uchiha may be great, but the Uzumaki took on 3 hidden villages alone and left no survivors, and of the 3 great ninjutsu which still has a clan of users. Last time I checked, 1 genin doesn't make a clan. The Hyuga believe in you, and if you don't find the surviving Uzumaki, who will? They are your heritage, my boy. Naruto smiled. Thanks, Jiji. He looked at the scrolls again with a smile. I'll have the rotation and 64 palms down in no time. Time skip. 6 weeks later, mission board. Pay-8 and Team 11 stood in a room that held handbills for all the currently unclaimed missions for Konohagakure up to A rank. They were spread across 4 boards, 1 on each wall. The east wall was the largest and held all the D ranks. This is where most genin picked from. Team, it has been 2 months that we have been together as a squad. I know your individual levels as well as how strong you are as a team. For that reason, we will pick from the North Wall today. The genin squad's eyes shone brightly. The North Wall had C rank missions, one of which easily paid 10 to 15 as much as a D rank. At the North Wall, the squad browsed through the different possibilities. C ranks were pretty much bandit camp extermination, courier, escort and retrieval, as long as any ninja involved that may appear to stop the mission was low C rank or below in rank. If one showed up between mid C rank and low B rank, it became a B rank mission. From mid B to high A was A rank, and any S rank would heighten the mission to S rank, which only the Hokage could approve. This one. Hate said and pulled one down. There's a small band of thugs terrorizing a village 50 miles from Konoha called Rocketm, probably 10 to 15 in all. No ninja in the band. The payment upon completion is 7,000 rim, 1 rim equals $1. Seems easy enough. The others nodded. Definitely. Daihi said, grinning. Stock up for a week's worth of supplies and meet me at the North Gate in an hour. He was gone in a swirl of leaves. North Gate, 8 a.m. Fade appeared before his team in a swirl of leaves at the specified time, and saw another group of genin there with an old man. One was the Uchiha survivor. Hayate hadn't really met Sasuke, but Yuigao had been on his security detail a while back and said he was an arrogant snob, even if he did seem to have dedication and skills in ninjutsu. The second was a pink-haired civilian fangirl by the looks of it. You could tell by the way her hair looked to be something that took hours to get right, and she was mooning over Sasuke, practically undressing him with her eyes, or the 12-year-old equivalent of such an action. The last was a boy with the fakest smile Hayate ever saw, and dressed in anbo-like clothing that showed his midsection. That tanto looked like standard issue ambu. This was Kakashi's team, if Hayate trusted Yugao's stories. The fact is that when you have an anbu captain for a girlfriend and listen when she talks, you can piece together 1001 things about the hidden village you're in. And that was without her ever spilling one secret only anbu and the Hokage should know. Even without trying, she never did such a thing. His team was actively ignoring Kakashi's and vice versa, except the one with the tanto. He was trying to speak to Naruto. Alright team, let's go. The quartet left in 4 bursts of speed out the gate then. Why can't our sensei be on time? Sakura asked in one of her few moments of non-fangeliness. And in such moments Sasuke found himself agreeing with her. This time, even Sai had to agree. Why did Kakashi always arrive 2 hours late? Back with Team 11, they traveled among the treetops at mid-genin speed, being about 7 miles an hour. While the 3 males of the team could go at least high genin speeds, Yakumo had to be taken into account. Yakumo was born with a naturally weak body. It was for this reason when Ikki Kurenai took her as an apprentice 4 years back that the Jinjutsu mistress of Konoha told the Hokage she would never be a good ninja. Needless to say, Yakumo did not like this. The Kurama heiress decided to prove the red-eyed ice queen of Konoha wrong, and that's when Naruto and Daihi found her training at their favorite part of Konoha's forests. She told them her story and they agreed to help. She had gone from physically weak as a fangirl to mid-genin in 4 years, thanks to the boys' patience and Naruto's gravity seals. For that reason, Yakumo would always be eternally grateful to her 2 friends. So they made their way through the trees. This was the preferred method of travel for any and all Konoha shinobi. The entirety of Hai no Kuni, excepting only villages and other clearings, had forestry thanks to Senju Hashirama, and that's why all genin-level shinobi of Konoha had to learn the tree-walking exercise. In silence the 4 traveled for 2 hours before Hade motioned for them to stop and take a rest. While they could in fact go all day and reach the village, it would leave the genin in very exhausted states, and they would be a hindrance in the mission. They dropped to a clearing about 20 miles in radius, and sat to catch their breaths, mainly Yakumo. Now would be a fine time for them to talk. Paid had told them when teaching them the tree-walking exercise and later when having them practice treetop travel, that talking while traveling by treetop was something they should never do, unless it was warning your teammates of something coming. In Naruto's case, an enemy could be shadowing you at any moment in the trees and make plans to counter whatever you say. For this reason, Naruto, Yakumo and Daihi each pulled out a kunai with a tag on it and threw them, so the kunai formed a triangle. 3-point sound barrier seal. Activate. A white dome surrounded the 4 for an instant before disappearing. No one outside would hear anything from inside now. Thank you, Naruto. Hade said. Always be prepared. He coughed once before continuing. I must ask you 3 if you are prepared to take the bandits' lives. We will arrive tomorrow and then attack the day after. I need to plan accordingly. All 3 of us have already made our first kills, sensei. Naruto replied. Really? He was surprised. Yakumo went first. When I was only 6 I did. I inherited the full Kekai Genkai of my clan, and that unfortunately comes with a price. My personality is split into 2. There is Yakumo, who you know, and Ido, who craves blood and death. I also am completely aware when Ido takes over, but am helpless to stop her. Ido killed my parents when I was 6, and I have come to terms with it. I can also channel Ido now so that Ido will do the killing, and I can take back control. Do not worry about me. As part of my clan's rite of passage to gain one of the 7 swords of my clan, the chosen wielder must be taken out of the village and use the sword to take the life of someone guilty and unpunished, which the sword will lead them to. Sunka, Twin Fires, led me to a runaway bandit who had raped dozens and killed even more. The hyuga have a way of doing things for those in the main house, but not of the line of the clan head. Our clan houses prisoners captured on missions by our own members, something all clans are allowed to do, and whenever a non-heir main house member turns 12, they must take on 1 prisoner in battle to the death. Should the prisoner win, they are set free with all possessions they had at time of capture. If the hyuga wins, he or she gets said possessions and can choose what happens to the corpse, as well as the respect of the clan, for passing the right to become a member of the main house. Paige sighed. Very well then. It is just sad that you 3 were exposed to death so early in peacetime. That's just what happens in the shinobi world, sensei. We are glorified mercenaries and assassins. Yakumo replied solemnly. No job is too hard or too low for the right price. Daihi continued. For that is the way of the shinobi. Naruto finished as Hade nodded. It was a famous quote among the elemental nations, especially in Konohagakure and Hai no Kuni. When asked what they thought shinobi meant, the Sannin had replied that way, with Tsunade having Yakumo's part, Jiraiya having Daihi's part, and Orochimaru with Naruto's. Times certainly were darker during the Second and Third Shinobi World Wars. They were silent for the next 5 minutes as each person ate ration bars. These were brown bars about 1 inch thick and 7 inches long, with the consistency of bark and taste of it too. They were made to give shinobi an extreme amount of calories and protein, while traveling without much fat. Their usefulness was never in question. The sanity of the Research and Development Department for not making a flavor other than oak was. The break lasted 15 minutes from beginning to end, before the quartet once again took off north, veering slightly to the west, this time to stay on course towards Rakuden no Sado. Time skip. 6 hours later, 15 miles from Rakuden no Sado. The team had found a decent spot to camp for the night. Though it was relatively early out, 3 were still genin, and there wasn't much light left in the skies anyways. Camp was already set with 4 one-person tents arranged in a circle around a campfire made by Daihi. Around the fire were flat stones that doubled as seats for the squad, courtesy of Naruto's Iwakan, and each member held a sharpened stick with fish caught from a stream that was just a quarter-mile from the camp caught by Hade. No one would be able to get into the camp because of a combination of Naruto's 8-point barrier seal, which was his strongest barrier that would still remain undetected, plus the traps Hade and Daihi set up in and out of the barrier with ninja wire, explosive notes and shuriken and Yakumo's genjutsu that made all inside the barrier invisible. Hade's motto was to over-prepare and overtrain, that way you were never overtaken and never beaten. It was the reason he was made Chunin at the age of 16. He would be an Anbu, but his cough was too loud for the stealthy Black Ops, so he settled for Elite Chunin. You did well today, team, Hade said. We covered over 30 miles on the first day of your first out-of-village mission. Not many genin squads can claim such an act. He pulled his fish back and inspected it before taking a bite. Tomorrow we'll arrive at Rocketman, meet up with the mayor there, who is our client. They'll give us information on the bandits, and we'll make a plan for taking them on. Hi, Sensei, they replied. The 4 fell into a comfortable silence as they ate dinner. After a few minutes, Daihi spoke. Rudo, how's that prototype coming? This immediately brought the attention of the other 2. Prototype for what? Hade and Yakumo asked. Well, it's a new seal I thought might be really useful. He paused. I was thinking about it since the scroll exam. When you tried to kill us with a giant spider, remember? I got to thinking about the summoning seal and how all of them are 1 or 2-way. I thought that if I made a seal that was more than 2-way, and what if I could travel between these seals at will? Yakumo whistled lowly. Naruto-kun, when you dream big. No one can argue with that. She shook her head. So, how did your quest with breaking the fundamentals of hyuga go? No luck so far. I can use 2-way seals on inanimate objects with 1 seal on a scroll in my robe and the other in my room back at the Hyuga compound. I can also use 1-way seals myself, but the distance between me and the seal can't be more than 20 feet, or the chakra cost exponentially increases. But then 20 feet, how much does it take? Hade asked. I'd say about half as much as the Kawarimi. Well, at least you created the first ever F-rank space-time jutsu, Daihi said. And with your reserves. Naruto smiled. I suppose so, but I'll work on it and add it to my long-term projects list. Yeah, Yakumo said, and the 4 saw the sky was darkening. Well, I'm off to bed, she said. I'll take first watch, Daihi said. No one argued as they took to their tents, and Daihi walked up a tree and sat in a branch to keep a lookout. Time skip. 11 a.m. next day, Rocket Mayor's office. Rocket no Sato was on the larger end as far as villages went. Its population was high enough to make it the 6th biggest village in Hai no Kuni, a country with villages numbering nearly 1,500 if not more. The reason relatively simple. The village itself rested on the center of not 1, not 2 but 6 major roads, hence the name Six Paths Village. The roads that began here went to the capitals of Hai no Kuni, Kase no Kuni and Rai no Kuni, as well as Yumshai, one of the 3 largest cities in hot water country, Yukigakure and Kanahagakure. The city had grown exponentially over the years from the travelers and merchants inside it. There was a slight problem. The group of bandits had recently taken to ambushing merchants and other travelers coming towards the city, and even after 6 weeks the local guards had no idea where they were located. They always went to a different road each time they attacked and never attacked in a discernible pattern in location or time. The locals estimated there were 10 to 12, but there could very well be more than that. After all, a bandit camp never stayed in one place very long before it grew. Thus far nearly 20 caravans of travelers, merchant or not, had been ambushed and raided with over 40 corpses, and nearly as much bodies gone missing from trains. The missing bodies were always girls or women between ages of 16 and 40 or so, and the corpses consisted of men who could, and probably did, fight back. Children and the elderly were left alone. It was estimated the bandits had already taken nearly 250,000 rim worth of goods from the merchants and travelers, and every week the number of stolen goods, stolen women and stolen lives increased. These are things the mayor told the squad of genin and their elite genin sensei. If you have any questions about your mission, the mayor asked. He was a man with shoulder-length black hair streaked with gray from age, brown eyes, and the looks of perhaps late 40s or early 50s. A few, Mayor Ichimaru. Hade said, coughing a little. First, about how far from the village were each of the attacks. Thought I forgot something. None were further than 1/4 mile from the village, but none ever were closer than 1,000 feet. A range of less than 500 feet then. I am glad I brought the headsets. My second question for you is what to do with the things we find in the camp. Please keep it, Mayor Ichimaru said. Divide it amongst yourselves or sell it all, give it away for all I care. Those bandits are driving the economy down, and if it will help you save us, I will be glad to let you have it. And lastly, I ask that you send no guards tonight. We will take care of everything and they will only be in the way. I would rather no more civilians lose their lives." The mayor smiled. "Of course, Hate-san. It shall be done." Treetops. Naruto dashed through the trees with his night vision Byakugan active. He wore a radio headset as he traveled. Hate's plan was simple enough. Step 1, had Naruto run in a ring around the village on the lookout for the bandit camp. By the Junin's estimation, the camp would be between 900 and 1700 feet from the village, and less than 200 feet from any road. Close enough to ambush any road, but far enough they could have ample warning if anyone trampled through the forest towards them, like, for instance, a platoon of village guards. He'd been out since 2 and it was roughly 6 hours of searching with his Byakugan. His tri-colored eyes were funny though. Night vision made him lose the ability to see Chakra, but extended his range to nearly 1,000 feet. His Chakra sight, which made his eyes violet, shrunk his range to 100 feet, but he gained something all hyuga dreamed of, full 360-degree vision. His regular ninjutsu, which was always active when he was awake, had a 500-foot range with the same weaknesses and strengths of any other Byakugan. Right now he was using his crimson Byakugan to see since it was nearly dusk, but he sat unmoving in a tree. His eyes were carefully trained on a building that was once a shinobi encampment, of the seals on it were indication. Many of these were spread throughout the elemental nations. They were temporary bases for shinobi during the 3 wars, and this one looked to be one from Iwa, because it was compiled completely out of stone. The seals on it were simply chakra suppression seals to stop anyone from sensing chakra inside. He easily saw inside though. "Sensei, Kumo-chan, Daihi. I've found them." He spoke into his headset. He was already situated in a sound barrier seal, so he wasn't fearful of anyone hearing him. "It looks like there are 30 of them, not 15. There is one leader as far as I can tell. He's a Nukenin too, but I looked at him earlier with my violet Byakugan, and he seemed to be about high genin or low chnin in strength. There were also 37 women in a large cage ranging from age 15 to 42, and all civilians from their chakra. All of the stolen goods look to be kept to one side of their base, which I have deduced is a former Iwa encampment from one of the wars. They are situated roughly 125 feet east of the Ukigaku Road, and roughly 1100 feet from Rakan." "Thank you, Naruto." Hate replied. "We will be there shortly." "Are there any guards stationed?" "Yes. No humans though. The Nukenin, while only low C rank, holds the cat contract. They patrol the ground rather vigilantly, but only the ground." "Cat. Be more specific." "There are many cats." "Wild cats?" "The ones I see are small, mere kits. I've counted a lynx, 2 tigers and a mountain lion though. He probably has enough chakra to get 1 teenage summons, and not any of the bigger ones for battle." "Alright. Do not do anything until we get there." "Sensei, after this is over." "The fit is there, Naruto." It took 10 minutes for them to arrive, and by that time Naruto had taken a soldier pill to replenish his chakra. They dropped into the same tree as him then. "Locations?" Hade asked. "They're eating dinner now. All of them are gathered in the center of the building. The prisoners are kept in a cage of steel set into the east wall. The stolen goods are located on the west wall. The only room is situated on the south wall, just in front of us, in the center, and is 20 feet wide by 20 feet long. The Nukenin, he's from Kiri, has been going in and out of it, and no one else goes near it. The tigers disappeared just 3 minutes prior, meaning their chakra depleted." Hade nodded. "The plan is simple. First, Naruto, get rid of the lion and lynx at one time, while Yakumo sets up a jinjutsu version of them to trick anyone who might look out. I would use a lightning jutsu to drill through the wall of the leader's office. You'll need this." Naruto held out 3 kunai with tags. "These are for my 3-point sound barrier. If you take Daihi, he'll explain them." Hei took the kunai with a nod. "I will give you word when I am through, and at that time Naruto and Yakumo execute planned prison break from the roof. Have 5 stone clones ready, Naruto. While the prisoners are being freed by Yakumo and the clones, Naruto and Daihi will isolate the leader and use teamwork to hold him off until I take down the bandits and come to aid them if necessary." Without a word the team left. Naruto and Yakumo immediately jumped to the roof of the cube-like stone building, and Naruto's Byakugan turned violet as he searched for the signatures of the summons and waited. He walked to the south end of the roof, and both genin saw the cats cross paths just as 3 things happened. First, Naruto's eyes turned back to milky white. Then he tossed a kunai that had a seal tag as he quietly said, "Wide-range disruptor seal. Activate." The last was that as soon as the summons left in clouds of smoke, 2 identical copies shimmered into existence when Yakumo whispered Jinjutsu. False copy jutsu. The false copy jutsu simply made an illusion of any object the user could imagine, and was a low-ranking illusion, being one of the earliest the Kurama clan taught their children at age 6, since by that time all D-rank techniques were well within reach. As soon as that happened, the pair made their way to just above the prisoners, and Naruto pulled out an ink brush and quickly wrote out a seal array, drawing a circle around it. He looked at Yakumo, who was ready in an instant to cast another illusion, and smirked. The lions sing and hills take flight. He spoke into his headset. That was the first of 4 messages they would use to tell the other group when to begin their part. With Hayate and Daihi. The lions sing and hills take flight. The 2 swordsmen stood right where the office should be, and Daihi took the kunai from his sensei and stabbed 120 feet to their left and 20 feet to their right in the wall. Ruto's a prodigy of Fuinjutsu, sensei. The sound barrier he learned from his grandmother's scroll, but he uses multiple copies of each seal to increase accuracy and strength of the seals. By setting a sound barrier in 3 places, he stabbed the last into a tree behind them, an equal distance from the other 2. They perform something called triangulation. Only parts inside the triangle they form are affected, and 3 barriers are created. Daihi held a ram seal. Naruto taught me how to use his tags, but I'll have to constantly feed chakra into them and concentrate unlike him, so don't take too long. Hayate was impressed with his students' work. All of them made him proud, really. He had received the top Fuinjutsu, Jinjutsu and Kinjutsu user of this year, when nearly all clans of Konoha had an heir in attendance. His luck really seemed to be good. 3-point sound barrier seal. Activate. Daihi announced, and a white barrier shimmered before disappearing from sight. Immediately Hayate pulled his own katana out and held it in both hands. While he channeled lightning chakra into it, sparks began to dance along the steel blade. He then stabbed the blade into the wall at the floor, and it slid through like a hot iron through butter, as he slowly created a arch-like incision in the 3-inch thick stone. It took over 10 minutes to completely get through, and when he did he pulled back and sheathed his blade. Daihi released the barrier and looked at his sensei as the Junin talked through the headset. The moon by day and the sun by night, he said. With Naruto and Yakumo. The moon by day and the sun by night. The voice of Hayate came loud and clear to the 2 genin, and each made a ram seal. Alchemy seal. Water. Activate. Vaster illusion. Dream twist. Oten. Rock clone jutsu. First the seal glowed bright blue before the stone changed composition into another of the 5 basic elements, water, inside the circle. Next Ikumo's master illusion, which was one of the Jinjutsu types only she could use because of her Kekai Genkai, took effect and the water fell to the floor, but no one even perceived it falling down, or noticed the hole in the wall. Lastly Naruto made 5 clones of the stone roof with pure nature manipulation alone. The Kumo already had another illusion ready too. Chaos illusion. Frozen memories jutsu. The 7 jumped down to the cell, and the women all looked at them, then to the thugs who didn't seem to respond at all. Don't worry, Yakumo said. We're shinobi of Konoha and we're hired by the mayor of Rakuten to save you. I already have an illusion set up that will make them see you girls just acting depressed and what you've been doing the last few days. The women were wide-eyed as Naruto spoke. These 5 are rock clones I just made and we'll take you up in groups of 5 to the roof. Stay there until we come to get you, and then we'll take you all to Rakuten no Sado, after we've taken care of the bandit problem. Thank you. One teary-eyed woman in her mid-30s said. The Hyuga Uzumaki smiled. That's doing our job, he said cheerily before watching as they all were taken in 2 minutes. Yakumo too, and his clones went up top to act as guard. Blind woman, deaf man, jacked off fool, he stated through the headset. With Hayate and Daihi. Blind woman, deaf man, jacked off fool. That was their signal. Daihi pulled out his tanto and charged it up with phoenix fire before stabbing the stone arch in the center. Passage of the Phoenix. In mere moments the arch literally melted into magma and hardened into black obsidian on the ground. The 2 swordsmen walked into the office, and Hayate spoke the final line of the password. Let the Lord of Chaos rule. With Naruto. Let the Lord of Chaos rule. Then that was his cue. Naruto charged earth chakra into his fist and slammed it into the ground, tearing the bars of the prison from the ground and twisting them as he did so. Iwakan. Grand Divide. The fissure was formed just as Naruto heard an explosion and saw said explosion from the leader's office, sending the stone door off its hinges and crushing 2 bandits underneath. His own personal earthquake had killed 4 slow-moving men who fell into the hole a good 50 feet and broke their backs, necks or legs, depending on how they landed. Starvation would kill them off eventually. The blonde kicked the bars with earth chakra running through his feet to send them flying and dashed right for the Nukenin. The man had light skin and brown hair with matching eyes. He wore a blue shirt and blue Anbu-style pants with a tanto on his waist, and his scratched hit eyed around his neck. A rather large scroll was across his back as well. The man saw Naruto coming and kicked out, but Naruto, now with Violet Byakugan active, rolled under it and got back to his feet. He faced the man, probably 20 or so, and launched out with twin palms of earth chakra which the Nukenin jumped back to avoid. He appeared then with his black and white Chakudo, ready to behead the man, except he parried the slash with his own Tanto, before landing between both in a defensive stance. You made a mistake attacking me, Leaf Nin. You're dead. He slashed and the water in the air froze rapidly, and several icicles shot off towards Naruto. He kicked the ground quickly. Iwakin. Upheaval. A stone wall rose and the icicles shattered as they hit it. He slashed with his own sword then. Spitfire of the Phoenix. Blizzard bullets. The Nukenin slashed 3 times and balls of ice with spikes on every side formed and hit the white balls of fire, extinguishing them. Naruto then jumped over the wall and charged wind chakra into his fist. His Kazakin was far from complete, but at least he had a few moves completed. Kazakin. Zephyr. His fist connected with the Tanto of his opponent and small blades of wind nicked the sword and made small, shallow cuts in the man's right hand. The move just wrapped his hand in a shell of wind that would create razor-sharp zephyrs constantly until the user released the shell in a condensed explosion that went away from the user. Kazakin. Gale Fist. All the pent-up energy suddenly exploded forwards, and the Nukenin's arm went way up leaving his defenses open. Payton. Phoenix Age Flower Jutsu. He spit out several fireballs without hand seals, but the Nukenin made 3 one-handed seals. Suiton. Wild Water Wave Jutsu. He raised his hand to his mouth with the thumb and first finger making a ring which he blew water through and extinguished the fireballs before it hit Daihi and knocked him back into a wall, giving him a concussion as his head hit the thick stone. Naruto growled and slammed his fist into the ground. Iwakin. Grand Divide. The Nukenin jumped and landed to one side of the crevice he created before slashing and creating 7 needles of ice. Naruto rolled to the left, but then felt a kick to the face and staggered backwards. The Nukenin smirked and lunged forward, but Naruto quickly spun. 8 trigrams divine rotation. The Nukenin flew backwards but righted himself. So you are a hyuga, he remarked. I wasn't sure because your eyes turned purple. That's right, I am. I am Hyuga Uzumaki Naruto, grandson of Hyuga Hito, the Earth Dragon, and Uzumaki Maiko, the Ice Queen, and also the son of the Red Death of Konoha, Uzumaki Kushina. I will not lose to you, whoever you are. I am Yuki Shishi. One of the last users of the ice release stands before you. I am also the 17th summoner of the Wildcats and holder of the Shiva sword. All of my clan's pride rides on my shoulders, and I will not fail them. Naruto entered a stance only one before him had used so far. You have failed, Shishi-san. You are in my field of divination. He never finished the question as he felt 2 strikes to his midsection. 2 palms. 2 more strikes to the chest. 4 palms. 4 to his shoulders. 8 palms. 8 to his arms. 16 palms. 16 to his arms again. 32 palms. And finally 32 to his torso, ending with a double palm strike to his chest, sending him back into a wall where spiderweb cracks appeared. Iwakin. 8 trigrams 64 stone palms. Shishi groaned and barely lifted his head, looking at Naruto. He asked. 64 of your tenketsu have become solid as the stone used to build this place. Your chakra has also temporarily become aligned to earth release. You will be unable to move, Shishi-san. That makes this easier. Naruto pulled out a single kunai and walked up to the man. He struggled but was stuck in the wall. The hyuga locked away his emotions as he prepared himself. He imagined the hyuga flame and placed all his emotions within before putting himself inside a void and putting the flame just outside it. He became one with the void and one with the world. While in the void no emotion could get through. This was the secret technique the hyuga had used for generations to seem so cold in battle. Hito had passed it to Naruto after his first kill. Masters of the hyuga flame and void could use it at any time, but Naruto wasn't so practiced and only used it when in a situation he wanted to block emotions. That's why he never even flinched when he slashed Shishi's throat with a steel blade. Time skip. 4 days later. Team 11 had successfully completed the mission with no complications. The bandits were easily dispatched by Haid, every single one dead from decapitation, pierced aorta or electrocution. Yuki Shishi, the leader, was dead by Naruto's hand. The women were all saved without a single casualty and welcomed into Rakuten, with both groups extremely grateful to the squad. The squad went through the supplies the bandits had as well as their stolen goods, and split them accordingly. The only noteworthy thing that anyone got was that Naruto claimed the sword and scroll of Shishi. He was no Kinjutsu user, but a sword that had ice abilities would not be a bad backup plan if his Taijutsu was ever useless, plus it would give him a skill in all 5 ninja arts. The scroll was in fact the Wildcat summoning scroll, but he hadn't signed it yet. He would wait until Konoha. For the next 3 days, Rocket no Sato held a festival to celebrate their heroes, and Hade allowed them to stay because it would look bad on Konoha if the heroes left during their own festival. Plus, who wouldn't want to stay for such a thing? After it was over, the squad took their pay from the mayor, but were extremely surprised. The shinobi system worked a specific way. The village took a 10% cut of every mission pay. This was what the client paid beforehand, and was a deposit of sorts. The other 90% belonged to the ninja team, and was paid after the mission was over to said individuals. In theory, the squad should have only been paid 6,300 rim by the mayor. The reality was that the former prisoners and the citizens were so very grateful to the shinobi that they had donated to the reward, and with so many people giving 10 rim here or 50 there, they ended up with a bonus of nearly 9,000 rim that was untaxed by the Hokage, the council. It was not rare this kind of thing happened, and it was in fact something many shinobi looked forward to. It was not a matter of if you would get a mission bonus, but how many missions would it be before your next one. So the four had each walked away with just under 4,000 rim apiece on their first C rank as a team. Not bad for their first time. And that wasn't even counting after they sold their things from the camper, the bounty that Naruto and Daihi had agreed to split from Shishi. Earlier today they arrived at the village, and Hade had told them he would take the mission report from the client to the Hokage Tower, and they were free for the next 3 days to rest from the mission. And so Naruto found himself with his Jiji in their house with his contract between them. He had just told the Hyuga elder of his mission and wanted his advice. It is tough, Naruto choosing a summons has to be done right. While some summon clans allow one summoner to hold multiple contracts, usually the clans are already allied. Myself, I am a mole summoner because they complement my Iwakin very well. What you should ask is whether a contract of wild cats such as lions, lynx, tigers and possibly others would benefit your fighting style. I think I understand, Jiji. I shouldn't just up and sign any contract just because it's the first I come across. I need to find something to help me with my final fighting style. If that's the case, then this contract is not for me. I need a clan that can help with all the styles of my Tenseigan. Do not get rid of it though. You may not use it, but someone you meet and become close to, or perhaps one of your own children, will be suited for the contract. There is also the chance the clan you finally become summoner to may allow you sign this contract as well. Of course, Hito Jiji. What about Shiva? Naruto held the sword on his lap. It was rather strange. As soon as he had claimed Shiva, it had glowed bright icy blue before changing shape. It was now the length of an okatana. Its sheath was a glossy black with silver dragons on each side, and the sword had a light blue hilt that looked like two intertwining dragons for the handle that separated where the cross guard was. The blade was an icy blue with glowing sealwork on it that seemed to be carved in. Experimenting while in Rock'em, Naruto also found when he channeled wind and water in it at the same time and slashed it created sharp needles of ice from water in the air. That sword is special. Normally Hyuga don't touch katana, but you're no ordinary Hyuga. The Uzumaki were known as masters of not just Fuinjutsu but also Kinjutsu, so keep it. It may even be a gift from your dear Maiko Bachan from beyond the grave. She was famous for using ice jutsu, and this sword seems like something right up her alley. Right, Jiji? I trust you're right. I think I should find somewhere to at least start on my summoning contract, so I'm off to the clan library. Naruto stood and bowed slightly to his grandfather in respect. Hito smiled slightly as he saw the young man leave before he coughed as he left. He grimaced as he knew it was getting worse. Just like Tusan, Hito said. Blood was in his hand where he just coughed. At least my family's disease won't affect you, Naruto-kun. With your Uzumaki DNA and the QP, there is no way it hasn't already been healed. I just hope I don't die too soon. The old man reached in his sleeve where a scroll with red tips and a Uzumaki spiral on it. I won't open it, Maiko-chan, he whispered. I promised to only give it to our child on my deathbed, and Naruto is the only child I've ever had. Meanwhile, Naruto walked along a path inside the compound when he saw something ahead which made him sigh. The other genius of the clan, Niji. He saw the boy who was older than him by a year talking to a cowering Hinata. Now Naruto was not one to use curse seals, but sometimes that boy made him want to use the cage bird seal on him. Niji was making some speech on fate and Hinata being weak or something. Naruto wasn't paying attention. If you heard it once, you've heard it 1,000 times. The two saw the blonde approaching and Niji scowled but bowed nonetheless. Good afternoon, Naruto-sama. Get out of here before I make up my mind whether I should fry your brain, stop your heart or turn your lungs to stone, Niji. The branch house member left mumbling something about fate as Naruto looked at the brunette. Are you alright, Hinata-sama? He asked. Thank, you, and Naruto KK-kun. She stuttered. Hinata-sama, you should control that stutter. Niji can only do that because you don't have much confidence in your abilities. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me. Naruto mumbled. Where were you going anyways, Hinata-sama? The lib library. ITH thought if could find a W way to get ST stronger, maybe I could make 2 Sanpi proud. I was going anyways, why don't we go together? He asked, and the heiress nodded with a light blush. At one time she might have suffered a full-face blush of the brightest red, but she saw Naruto every day and talked TP him a few days a week. So the two made their way to the hyuga library. The hyuga are the downright largest clan in all of Konoha, and one of the largest among all the nations. This is one reason that they hold one of the largest libraries of any clan of the Leaf, second only to the Uchiha. The building itself holds hundreds of thousands of scrolls created or collected over the long life of the clan, since the first Hyuga Hiran, who was the only son of the Uchiha who was born with the Byakugan instead of the Sharingan. That is a total of 12 floors high and set up like a tower or spire made of pure chakra steel, and covered in a multitude of seals from the only Hyuga Fuinjutsu master, Hyuga Hijin. The library was a magnificent building. The pair walked inside, and shelves of scrolls lined all the walls of the first floor, ladders set to reach the higher ones, and a single spiral staircase in the center of the building, to get to the higher floors. Each floor had to be as big as, if not larger than, the Chunin exams arena floor. Then they walked up the staircase and Naruto stopped on the 3rd floor. See you Hinata-sama. Next time Niji bullies on you, just teach him who's boss, K. Because that's who you are. You're Hyuga Hinata, next in line to being clan head. Hinata nodded. Bar right, and Naruto-kun, she said before going up to the 7th floor. Naruto turned back to step onto the floor, seeing a plaque to his left. 3rd floor, famous shinobi, kunoichi, jutsu, summons, etc. Biographies and explanations. He nodded to himself. This would be perfect to figure out the best contract to look for. He set out in search of exactly that. Time skip. 4 hours later. Konoha is bust, Naruto mumbled as he saw the stack of scrolls to his left which he had read. The village he lived in housed the snake, toad, slug, dog, ape, sun phoenix, kitsune, spider, mole, turtle, hawk, and formerly the raven contract. While some might have matched one aspect of his style, none would completely match up. He shook his head, grabbed the next scroll and opened it, eyes widening. The elemental dragons of the Uzumaki clan. The summoning contract for elemental dragons was one of the 7 clan contracts the Uzumaki were known to hold before their destruction in the 3rd Shinobi World War. This particular clan of summons holds powerful beings, dragons of both Western and Eastern descent. Not only that, but if the summoner uses a particular elemental nature while using the summoning jutsu, it will call on a dragon with that specific element. The last known holder of this contract was Uzumaki Maiko, and she most often summoned an ice dragon named Shiva to battle. After that, the scroll pretty much explained many battles with the summons, and named a few of the known dragons: Ifrit of fire, Rama of lightning, Zeus of storms, Neptune of water, Bahamut of the golden flames, etc. Naruto's hands shook with excitement. This is it, he thought. An Uzumaki contract that is perfect for my style. I don't know how or when, but I will get this. Especially since you were the last summoner, Bachan. Naruto then took the scrolls and put them back. That scroll had said the contract was thought lost, but if anyone knew where it was, it would be Hito. Time skip. Next day. Naruto made his way through the village until he found who he was searching for. He saw the purple-headed woman alone at training ground 14 practicing Kenjutsu katas, and he slowed his pace as she gracefully glided around the training dummy, attacking it from all sides in quick succession. She used mostly slashes in her style with a lot of footwork to keep moving in a circle around her target. Naruto also noted with his violet Byakugan that her blade had a small mix of fire and wind chakra with about 4 times as much fire as wind coursing through it to enhance the okatana. She stopped and sheathed her blade before turning to regard him. Her gaze was heavy. It was like she tripled the gravity around him just by making eye contact. She was that powerful. He walked until he was before her. Can I help you, Yuga-san? She asked. Are you Yuzuki Itgao? He asked. He had to enter the void just to speak before this woman. I am. Banbu Captain Yuzuki Itgao, Kenjutsu Grandmistress, Heiichi Sensei's girlfriend and the student of my Ka-san, Uzumaki Kushina. That Yuzuki Itgao. Itgao's eyes widened. WH what? Sensei's son. You're A, but you have the Byakugan. My grandfather is Yuga Hito, and he had a daughter with Uzumaki Maiko, Uzumaki Mito's twin sister. That daughter was later found by Uchiha Himeru, Mikoto's father, on a mission, and the 4-year-old was brought back to Konoha and taken in by the Senju clan. She went on to become an S-rank Kunoichi of this village, and eventually marry my father and become pregnant by the very man you called Nai-san. Itgao's eyes got still wider. I believe you. You must be Naruto. Hi. I am Yuga Uzumaki Naruto. Besides the fact that you telling me this means Yair Sensei is in a heap of trouble for not telling me there was an Uzumaki on his team, how can I help you? Sensei was like a mother to me, and if you're her son, I would love to help you however I can. Naruto nodded. Can you teach me my mother's kinjutsu style? He asked. My grandfather teaches me my hyuga heritage every day, but besides a single scroll of hyuinjutsu, I have nothing from the Uzumaki clan. My dream is to one day reform my mother's clan, but I can't if I don't have their styles mastered. Ikao smiled slightly. She knew what he meant. Naruto, I will help you. I am also from a nearly dead clan, you know. The Uzuki are a clan of swordmasters and swordmistresses, but after 3 wars my clan isn't very large with only 20 members. If we lost our swords, the Uzuki would just be a family of ninja with nothing to bring us together. I am no master of Kushina Sensei's style though. That requires a swordsman with an affinity to both water and fire. I will teach you from the scrolls she left me though, deal? Hayakao sensei. Meet me here every day, you're not on a mission at 3, and I'll teach you for 3 hours. Does that sound fair? Hi. Her eyes were very soft as she looked at him. You look just like Nai-san, you know. You talk like him too. Your dream and burden is that of sensei, though. She wanted her family together in one place after Nai-san saved her from Kumo. Naruto hadn't known that. Thanks I guess. He said. Ikao smiled. We'll start tomorrow, Kay. He nodded. I'll be back tomorrow then. He said and turned to leave but felt a hand on his shoulder. Can I tell my 2 friends? They weren't her students, but they saw Kushina as a mother. All 3 of us were orphans, and sensei helped us get through it. Do you trust them? Naruto asked. With my life. Alright then. Ikao smiled. Thank you. They'll be so happy to meet you. I'll see you tomorrow. The Uzumaki left. See you tomorrow at Taudo. Hyuga compound, 9 a.m. Of the 5 basic elemental natures, Earth is the most resilient and balanced. It is solid and hard to break through. That is why most Earth ninjutsu is defensive and support-based. These are the reasons creating the Iwaken, a style which mixed Ken's precision and Ken's brute force, seemed difficult. The most difficult move I adapted from either style though had to be Ken's rotation. That is the Hyuga's ultimate defense, as you know. To use it, one must spin while simultaneously releasing an amount of chakra from all of your tenketsu. The 8 trigrams divine rotating boulder requires the same, but for all tenketsu to release earth nature chakra instead. Hi, Jiji. Naruto replied. Since he still had today and tomorrow off from training, Naruto wanted to begin training on the true ultimate defense of hyuga which Hito had created. This is very difficult, and if done improperly your tenketsu will turn to stone as if we had a spar. The blonde flinched. He never enjoyed being beaten by a man who was nearly 60. That is why your training for this move will begin with performing a variant of the leaf exercise. You will take a leaf for every one of the major 64 tenketsu, and use chakra to stick them to your body. The second step is that you must release the correct amount of earth nature chakra from each one, to turn all 64 leaves to stone at once. Only after you've achieved this will we begin the second step. Hi Jiji, I will not fail. Naruto said, completely serious. He walked to one of the 4 trees in the training ground they owned, an oak, before walking up it. After he had gathered 2 leaves he placed them on his palms. Bola Brash and Divjal would try right off the bat to do all 64, Naruto was not brash. During his training for the regular rotation, he had found something out. If he started with 2 and doubled every time then it was simple to do it right. Within seconds the leaves on his palms turned to stone until he stopped the low of earth chakra, and once regular chakra was channeled, they reverted to normal. The next 2 would go on his stomach, then 4 to his elbows and knees, 8 to his back, 16 along his arms, and the last 32 would be on his legs. These 64 points were the major tenketsu, and 90% of all chakra traveled through these. Other minor tenketsu were not nearly so important to the chakra network, but they still had their uses. Regardless of how easy it would be compared to trying all at once, the method Naruto used still took nearly 3 hours. He waited to move to each new set until he could turn all leaves to stone at once and within 2 seconds, and he then waited until he could do all 64 within 1 second. Since the rotating boulder would be a counter, he needed to be able to do it quickly in the heat of battle. When he hopped from the tree, Hito was riding in a brown-tipped scroll before he looked up to see Naruto coming. I take it you've done it then. Naruto nodded. Good. It is nearly noon though, and I have a council meeting in 15 minutes, so we'll begin step 2 tomorrow. You know these things always run for hours. Sure thing Jiji. Naruto said with a smile. Your old bones better not turn to dust by then though. Hito smirked. Just make sure you outlive this old man, my boy. Naruto left with a wave while Hito looked down at his scroll in sadness. Along the top were the words the last will and testament of Hyuga Hito. It won't take much to outlive me, Naruto, just make sure you do. He whispered to himself. Meanwhile, Naruto made his way through the Hyuga compound, in hopes of finding something to do in Konoha, when his Byakugan caught something coming towards him. Someone. Good morning, Hanabi-sama. Naruto said with a bow of his head to the younger heiress. Hyuga Hanabi had indeed stalked before him, accompanied by her elder sister. Good morning to you as well, Hinata-sama. He was a little curious why the two princesses would need him, but he would do what he could to aid them. Just who we needed, Hanabi said. You're not busy, right Naruto Nai-san? Hanabi had taken to calling Naruto big brother, since he helped her here and there with her Jiken when she was still too young to learn. The girl was definitely talented if she could piece together the workings of the basics by watching with the Byakugan as two Hyugas sparred. Not until 3 o'clock, Hanabi-sama. Is there something you needed? Then Naruto-kun would you mind very much if we asked why you to help us train a little? The blonde smiled. Of course. I cannot stay past 2:45 though. I haven't had lunch yet, so why don't I meet you at your training ground at 12:15? That's half an hour from now. Thanks, Nai-san. Hanabi said, and the two princesses of his clan left. Naruto himself went out of the compound to find something to eat, maybe some dango today. Sweets and such snack shop. Naruto arrived to the best place in all of Konoha to find something tasty. The sweets and such snack shop was run by a 40-something-year-old woman named Kimitsuki and her teenage son, Jin. They were both nice enough folks and never turned a single customer away for any reason. Naruto had come here once a week for the last few years and had to say that they made some pretty good food. He had even gotten Hinata hooked on their cinnamon buns. If anyone ever thought she would never be anything but meek, they hadn't seen the Hyuga era scarf down those sweets like they wouldn't exist the next second. The blonde took a seat at one of the booths and got a little relaxed. How could he not? The interior was a light blue, and noise was very low, only a few other people were in the building now. The smells of freshly baked sweets mixed together and traveled to the pale-eyed Uzumaki's sensitive nostrils, which only served to feed his slight hunger the chakra control exercise had caused. The seat was also very comfortable, being of a purple leather stuffed with cotton to make the back and seat much softer than regular wood. Look who it is. Been a while since I seen Yugaki. Naruto turned to see a woman who always brought a smile to his lips. Thought you abandoned me to be with those arrogant bastards. Said woman slid into THR booth across from him. My family is not all bad, Anko-ni, Naruto said. Jiji is very nice. Hinata-sama and Hanabi-sama are also humble enough. Ah, they don't count. You corrupted the pure Hyuga ways with them. Anko replied. You don't even use the Jiken, Atado. Heck, you even know the basics of my Hibita Jutsu. It was the truth. While out training one day, Naruto had encountered Anko as she attempted her favorite trick of throwing a kunai to barely slice someone's cheek. His violet Byakugan saw it coming, and he slightly tilted his head to make her miss. Anko got kind of upset that someone ruined her fun, and so she challenged him to a spar for being such a Hyuga prick and ruining all my fun. At 10 he wasn't on her level, but since Anko hadn't gone all out from the beginning, she nearly lost the fight. She was impressed with him and decided to help him out a little, and taught him the basics of Hibi style, as well as one Kaiten and Doten technique, and even the striking shadow snakes. In that time, Naruto had grown to see the woman as an older sister, and even swore to one day rid her of the curse mark on her neck. Glad to know that I'm such a horrible Hyuga. Ah, come on little foxy-kun. You were corrupted by me first. Naruto smiled and shook his head. You're not that bad, Ni-chan. Naruto replied. You're probably saner than 80% of the village. Wow, this village must be more batshit insane than Irachi team then. Anko said and chewed on some dango as it arrived in 2 plates. The owners already knew that whenever Naruto and Anko sat together it was dango they wanted. Language, Ni-chan. Naruto said as he took a bite of his own, a food he was introduced to by Anko. Well, he didn't think it was the food of the gods, Naruto did like it more than most other foods. Anko flicked Naruto's Hittite that hung around his neck. That thing signifies you're an adult. Be mature enough to handle adult language, Foxy-kun. Yes, because I'm the more immature of the two of us. Damn right you're gaki, she said with a grin before taking another stick of dango to eat. Now, since I'm on the up and up and know all kinds of people in all kinds of places, I heard you went on your first C rank. Tell me all about it, Atado. Time skip. 12:15, Hyuga compound. At precisely the time he said, Naruto walked onto the field which belonged to the royal family of the Hyuga aka Hiyashi and his daughters. It was a light green field of grass with a few training dummies and trees, a small pond on one side, and a medium-sized section of the field set in a white ring meant for spars. They immediately saw the heiresses near the dummies. Both were going through basic katas for the Jiken, but it was kind of obvious that the 10-year-old Hanabi was more skilled than her elder sister. Naruto was slightly curious of that until his violet Byakugan, which were always active inside the village, picked up on something. Hanabi's chakra system was a deep chocolatey brown color, while Hinata's was deep ocean blue. Both girls had strong affinities, but while Hanabi's was earth, Hinata's was water. Strange. Neither had seemed to notice him yet, which gave him an Anko-ish idea. That woman really had corrupted him. Naruto pulled 4 kunai out and tossed them one to both sides of each girl, and moved his hands holding the ninja wire attached to them in a certain pattern. One yelped while the other each, and both were suddenly tied to a wooden post. The Hyuga Uzumaki calmly walked forward. Lesson 1. Remain vigilant. The reason I was able to do that is because you did not pay attention to your surroundings. The sisters heard Naruto and turned their heads to look at him. This is something my Jiji taught me. This lesson is very important for all Hyuga. Our eyes are useless if we don't use them. So that's what you're teaching us? Hanabi asked. The smile he gave them was not something pleasant. It promised fun of the Mitarashi Anko variety. Naruto pulled out 2 kunai and severed the ninja wire with wind chakra blades. You could say that. You could say that. The girls landed on their feet and looked around for Naruto but couldn't find him. They heard a dozen voices speak as one just then from every angle and saw multiple copies of him surrounding them. Suiton. Hidden mist jutsu. All of them exhaled a deep mist from their mouths that coated the training area. This is the signature jutsu of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, Naruto said, though the sound echoed all over, making it impossible to discern his location. Hitojiji learned it from an Uchiha when he was in Anbu and taught it to me, since he can't make even 5 cubic feet of mist. The Byakugan can partially see through it, but since the mist is purely made of chakra, it distorts your vision. We can't use our eyes then, Hanabi complained. She heard a whizzing sound and barely rolled to dodge 3 kunai. It's time to show you just how much vigilance can save you. This exercise will teach you to use your regular vision and hearing, so you can know just how big an advantage the Byakugan supplies. The objective is to take as little damage as you can before 245. If all my clones are dispelled, then the mission ends with you succeeding. If you can both stand by the time I must leave, the mission was successful. If not, mission failure. But how many sea clones are there? 5 each of water, stone and wind. All of them are weaker than me with about 20% of my skill and strength. Hajime. Hinata and Hanabi had decided to stick together for this and stood back to back. Their eyes scanned and ears were sharp for anything that may come. Both had the Byakugan deactivated because the mist made everything blurry and fuzzy. Hinata had a kunai pulled out in each hand, held backhand just in case, and Hanabi was tense, ready to dodge, and had a single kunai in her right hand held the same way. The first wave began with shuriken from all around them. They heard it and the heiresses rolled to the left, under a few of the star-like blades, and heard as they made a rather loud noise which echoed among the mist. Clang, clang, clang. The girls rose up just as one clone was in front of them and tried to jiken them both in the chest. Out of instinct, Hinata threw her left shuriken, and it pierced the clone's forehead, causing it to dissolve into water. Hinata smiled, gaining a little confidence at that. Perhaps she wasn't nearly so weak as everyone thought she was. Meanwhile, Hanabi had heard a shuriken whirling for her elder sister, and decided to deflect it with her kunai, knocking it to the ground a few feet away. The girls were once more back to back and completely vigilant. They kept ears open and heard something. Something that caused them to immediately separate and jump away from each other. Sukin. Salty tears. Dozens of sharp blades of water hit where they just were, and another Naruto clone landed right there only to dissolve into water, as shuriken pierced him from both sides. Are you okay, Ayamoto? Hinata asked. I should be asking you that, Ni-chan. Hanabi replied smugly, but her eyes widened as she saw a clone appear and kick Hinata in the back to send her forward. Just as Hanabi launched her kunai at it, the clone kicked the ground. Iwakin. Upheaval. A wall of earth rose up to protect him, and the younger heiress used a chakra-enhanced jump to land atop the wall before launching herself at him. She gave him a kick enhanced by chakra to the face which caused him to dissolve into mud. She had made a simple mistake there in separating from Hinata, and now the 10-year-old found herself surrounded by 4 clones. Oops, she muttered. One launched a kick that she ducked under, but the second kicked her back while the third kicked her up. As she was in mid-air and in pain from the bruises she would get, she twisted and launched shuriken downward, making one disappear in blades of wind and another be gone in a puddle of water. She landed in a crouch and felt the throbbing in her stomach and back. She blocked out the pain and simply looked at the remaining pair as she pulled out 2 kunai. She was not prepared for the smoke bombs landing at her feet since she was so focused on them. They released a purple cloud, and she immediately felt herself becoming exhausted. Sleeping gas was her last thought before falling into unconsciousness. Meanwhile, Hinata was standing and locked in battle with 2 clones. She had dispatched a wind clone and 2 stone clones earlier, but then these tried to hit her with kunai that had a blade of wind 2 feet from the tip on them. Every time she blocked one with her kunai, the kunai were cut into. She jumped back from one slashing but felt her arm being cut. In the battle her arm sported a few cuts, as well as her face had one on her cheek. Hinata rolled backwards to dodge another slash and was up in time to send a palm strike to his back and dispel the clone into a gust of wind. The other threw the kunai at her, but she ducked under it and threw her own kunai into his throat, making him become august as well. She smiled to herself until a clone appeared behind her and hit her in the neck with a chop that made her crumple into unconsciousness. By the time the heiresses woke up, they were both sitting up against a training post, and the mist was gone. They saw Naruto sitting across from them, and neither had any wounds or pain to speak of. "What?" Hanabi asked in confusion. "Vigilance is not a lesson to be taught in a single day," Naruto spoke. "It is something earned through many mistakes. Your first mistake was made today. Well, the mist was real, the clones were not. The entire thing was an elaborate genjutsu coupled with hyuuga. How?" Hinata began. "I began with those kunai I threw to trap you. They have mirror seals carved into them which made you think you saw and heard multiple copies of me use the hidden mist jutsu. That gave you the perception that I had clones out. Well, I am not the best with ninjutsu. I can still use the false copy jutsu and the false perception jutsu." He saw their befuddled looks. "Each of them are D-rank genjutsu Kumo-chan taught me. The false copy jutsu creates illusions of sight and sound, while the false perception changes your sense of time, location and feeling. You two never moved except the first roll away from those kunai I threw. Every clone was simply a strong genjutsu that you didn't dispel or see, because you were tricked into turning your genjutsu off." "Geez, Ani-san, you beat us so easily," Hanabi said. "Just remain vigilant." The blonde looked up at the sun. "It's nearly 3 though, so I have to go. Since tomorrow's Sunday and the academy and genin squads don't meet on Sundays, I'll meet you here at the same time, if that's fine with you too." "Hi." "Sure, Nai-san," Hanabi said. "Good. Then goodbye until then, Hinata-sama, Hanabi-sama." He bowed his head slightly for both before turning and leaving. He had an appointment with Ikgao to keep. Naruto exited the Hyuga compound after his training session with Hinata and Hanabi, with his violet Byakugan active and Shiva strapped to his right hip. He was ready to finally learn some things from his heritage, finally from his Uzumaki heritage, that is. Sure, Hyuinjutsu was great in a lot of ways, but he needed to learn the other half of Uzumaki-style fighting, swordplay. And Yugao could help him there since she was the foremost Genjutsu expert in all of Konohagakure no Sado. Then there were these other 2 friends of hers. Who could they be? Well, Yugao had said neither was a student of his mother, which means that it wasn't Fury or Itachi, although Itachi was a Nukenin anyways. He would just have to wait to find out. Naruto shook his head as he stepped onto the right training ground. He would find out soon, very soon. Because of his violet Byakugan, Naruto didn't have to look around and simply walked forward until he could see a group of 3 Konoha Kunoichi. One was Yugao, and the other he knew as Konoha's premier Genjutsu mistress, Yuhi Kurenai. The last wasn't that Kiba's older sister, Inuzuka. Hana, that was her name. "Right on time, Naruto," Yugao said with a small smile to the boy. "Of course. I made sure to stop my training with Hinata-sama and Hanabi-sama in time for your lessons, Yuga-sensei," Naruto said with a bow of his head. His eyes did catch Kurenai perking up at the mention of Hinata. "You were training with my student?" the red-eyed woman asked. "Hi, Kurenai-san," Naruto admitted. "We are cousins and both sisters requested I aid them in their ninja training, so I complied. They are the heiresses of my clan, after all." "Oh, and what did you teach them?" Hana asked, very curious what one genin could actually teach another. "Probably nothing special. I used a Jinfuin jutsu of my own creation to trick them into thinking they were fighting a platoon of my elemental clones until they were beaten, and then allowed them to awake before explaining how vigilance is far more important than any jutsu." "Wait, are you sure you're a genin?" Hana asked. "I have only passed my genin examination and have yet to be promoted again since my instatement in the ninja military 2 months ago, Hana-san," he answered formally. "Anyways," Yugao said, "why don't we make introductions and include our likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams? The 3 of us have agreed to act as your sensei since your mother did so much for us, Naruto. Unless you have a problem with that." Naruto's eyebrows raised fractionally, but he was firmly within the void since the beginning, so not too much. "I thank you. That is more than I could have hoped, Yugao-sensei, Hana-sensei, Kurenai-sensei. Well, I'll go first then. My name is Inuzuka Hana, Chunin of Konoha and heiress to the Inuzuka clan, but you already knew that, I guess. I like animals, healing and helping people. I don't really like the Uchiha brat who always acts spoiled or anyone who abuses animals. My hobbies are healing both people and animals, studying medical scrolls and training with my Ninken, the Himeru triplets, who are in the forest somewhere right now. My dream is to become an even greater medic nin than Senjutsunate. I am Yuhi Kurenai, Jonin of Konoha and sensei to Genin Squad 8. I like illusions and teaching. I dislike perverts, womanizers and arrogance. My hobbies are developing more genjutsu and helping my students be the best they can. My dream, I suppose it is to become the greatest Jinjutsu user in the whole elemental nations. And I am Yazuki Yugao, Hanbu captain of Konoha. I like swords, hyuga and helping my village. I dislike those who think Kunoichi are second-rate shinobi just because of our gender, and anyone who discriminates against my friends. My hobbies include practicing Kenjutsu, being with hyuga, and making the Anbu the best Black Ops force in the elemental nations. Above all, I dream to surpass Kushina-sensei in Kenjutsu. Naruto listened to each of the three Kunoichi intently, trying to discern a small amount of their personality from these tidbits of information. My name is Yuga Uzumaki Naruto, he stated. I like training and learning new things. I dislike fangirls, those who refuse to reach their full potential, and a certain group of people who wants to make people form loveless marriages just to make powerful children. My hobbies include learning the history and jutsu of my clans, developing my personal fighting style and training with my Jiji and with my team. My dream. Well, I have a few goals, but my true dream is to meet any survivors of the Uzushio massacre and to reform the Uzumaki clan. The women looked at him approvingly. His personality was definitely a combination of his parents. That much was apparent just from his introduction. Well, since this is the first day, I think I speak for all of us when I say we would like to see how skilled you are, in order to better assess what to teach you, Yuga said with a small smile. That seems a wise course of action. Naruto agreed. So, you wish me to spar one of you? He asked. Hi, Yugao said and stepped forward. I am the most experienced in battle and the best to test your fighting skills, so I shall be your opponent. Is that all right with you? Naruto looked at the purplinet before him and the void shook. An Anbu captain. That was a scary thought. Why did he feel so excited though? He nodded his head though and grabbed Shiva as well as the Shi that was in, before he dropped them both to the ground. Just before they hit the grass, a sealing array appeared and swallowed the blade before disappearing. The three women looked at the boy in surprise. What was that? Hana asked. That was a two-way space-time seal I have been working on for a long time. I simply used my chakra to create it momentarily, so my katana could be safely stored elsewhere and not be in the way while we spar, sensei. Yugao nodded at the wisdom of that. With his experience, or lack thereof, in Kenjutsu the katana would merely be in the way probably. Alright. Nai-chan, if you would, Yugao asked and the Jinjutsu mistress nodded, standing between the two. All of the 5 shinobi arts are allowed in this spar, and the winner will be decided when one is unable to battle or forfeits, or if I call the match. Kurenai stated with little emotion. Begin. She disappeared in a swirl of black sakura petals, signaling the start. As soon as Kurenai disappeared, Naruto shot forward at Yugao. The purple-haired Kunoichi easily spun around him and smirked as he turned quickly on his heels, probably a skill gained from Kaiten training. He eyed her with his Byakugan and jumped back. You are much too fast for my Juken to be of use, sensei. He simply stated. Very smart. Yugao said and placed her right hand on her katana's hilt lazily. Care to try again? Naruto looked at her and formed a fist, surprising the audience. Since when did a Hyuga use a fist into jutsu? Iwakin. Grand Divide. He shouted and punched into the ground, literally causing the ground to shake as a fissure formed, traveling right at the swordmistress he was fighting, so she was forced to quickly use a replacement with a log to escape it. Naruto didn't have time to celebrate, however, and he kicked his foot up to block Yugao's sudden jumping slash with a wall of stone. Iwakin. Upheaval. The purple-haired swordmistress didn't seem at all surprised, however. Her blade was suddenly engulfed in flames and heated the rock, slashing through it as if it was butter. Seeing this example of ninkinjutsu, Naruto immediately grabbed 3 kunai from his pouch and threw them at once, landing all in the floor, less than 20 feet apart. These particular ones had special tags on them, ones he had been working on for a long time. Space-time sealing art. 2-way teleportation seals. Activate. Each of the tags glowed a bright white, and the kunai disappeared, etching small seals into the ground where they had hit. Immediately, Naruto teleported to the closest one, about 40 feet from Yugao. He quickly made a cross-hand seal. Wind style. Wind clone jutsu. 2 more copies of himself materialized, and each one shot forward while he stayed back. The 2 clones immediately shot forward. One took out 2 kunai and channeled wind chakra into them, until blades the size of ninjato materialized from the tip of the blades. The other performed 3 hand seals and held the last, a ram seal, as he spoke. Wind style. Airstream. The second clone exhaled a thin stream of highly pressurized air that Yugao switched out with a log to avoid. The log had a hole created straight through the center of it all the way through. Meanwhile, the first clone threw the first kunai at Yugao, but she intercepted it with her katana, coated in a combination of both fire and wind chakra, to knock it aside. Quickly, he shot forward and attempted to lunge at the Anbu captain, but she simply sidestepped it and slashed through the clone's midsection with a fire-coated blade. The clone exploded in blades of air, catching the Anbu off guard and making slight cuts in her Anbu clothing. Well, best not to take those on at close range, Hyuga muttered. I've never seen those used before though. The remaining clone nodded. A Sunagaker technique that was tucked inside the Hyuga library, he stated while performing hand seals. Just like this one. Wind style. Wind sword jutsu. And with that, a katana of pure wind formed in one hand and he dashed forward, slashing at Hyuga's chest. She easily parried it with her own wind-cloaked katana and quickly shoved a kunai into the clone's throat while simultaneously performing a body flicker of leaves. The original Naruto stood in the same place, having analyzed both clones' easy defeat. With that thought in mind, he used his violet Byakugan to see her appear 50 feet from him and grip 6 kunai, 3 to each hand tightly and threw them all at a vital organ. Hyuga easily deflected every single one with minimal effort and movement of her katana. The kunai landed on the floor uselessly and Naruto frowned. Not good at all. He crouched down slightly before channeling chakra to his legs and dashing forward quickly. Hyuga followed his movements and awaited his arrival. Naruto's right palm was coated in flames while the left sparked with electricity as he arrived at her location, and he thrust out his fiery hand, attempting to hit the kunoichi who simply danced around it. His other one moved faster due to lightning chakra and came closer, but still ultimately failed. Hyuga took his imbalance and used it to make him pay, grabbing his right arm just below the shoulder blade and throwing him straight to the ground. Before he could even make a move to get up, a foot was planted squarely on his chest, and a katana pointed at his throat. Hyuga wins. Kurenai spoke up, though a clear amount of surprise had entered her voice, even as both her and the Inuzuka heiress walked forward. Hyuga smiled and sheathed her blade before offering her hand to Naruto, which he gladly accepted. Despite that fact, I am still impressed, Hyuga stated. You are definitely far above genin level. I'd say you could take on perhaps nearly every chunin in this village and a few newly promoted takubetsu jonin and win. You showed excellent wisdom in your moves, restrained from celebration and from making needless moves. Your Fuinjutsu was impressive, as is your ninjutsu. I saw none of your Jinjutsu, but your Shuriken Jutsu looks advanced far above most chunin. All in all, you can consider yourself at least mid-C rank to low B rank in skill right now, Kurenai stated. But we'll take you far above that, Naruto-kun. Hana continued. Between the three of us we are the current best in the village in our art. Kinjutsu, Jinjutsu and medical ninjutsu. While Kushina, Itachi and Tsunade-sama were indeed stronger in these aspects, none have been in the village for a very long time, and only Tsunade-sama is likely to ever come back since one is deceased, and the other is a Nukenin. Naruto bowed his head. Arigato, Hyuga-sensei, Kurenai-sensei, Hana-sensei. The women smiled. For today, we are done, Hyuga stated. Tomorrow at the same time one of us will be here to help you in our area of expertise, but we each must make schedules for now. You understand, right? Naruto nodded. Of course. I will see you at the appointed time, sensei. Hana smirked. And don't be so formal all the time, Naruto-kun, she said and ruffled his spiky hair good-naturedly. Though Naruto wished to protest, he did not. Instead, he allowed the void to drop. Right, of course. Emotion finally re-entered his voice. The women smiled to him. Now why don't you leave us to make our decisions for your training? Naruto nodded and turned to leave, making sure to pick up his 6 kunai on the way out. His personal tags were not something he wished other to get to just yet. It was one of his greatest advantages, after all. As he left, the 3 kunoichi looked at one another. So, who gets him tomorrow? Hana asked. The other 2 women shared a look. But the Hyuga chakra control, he would benefit from either of us, Kurenai said. However, I will only be able to teach on weekends since I have my own students, and with tomorrow being Sunday and all, I won't have nearly enough time to make a lesson up. Then I think Hyuga-chan should get him, Hana said. He wanted Kinjutsu training after all. Next weekend and the other after unless she's on a mission, Kurenai-chan can teach him. Hyuga has him on weekdays and whenever one of you is on a mission I'll take over. Sound good? The Anbu and Jonin thought of it before nodding. Sounds good, they replied as one. Well, there you have it. The first training session with his 3 new sensei. Now, I don't plan on showing other training sessions, I just needed to show this one. This does not mean that I won't show Naruto with one of the 3 around Konoha from time to time, though. I've got plans. Quote of the day. The act of dying is one of the acts of life. Marcus Aurelius. On Hagakure mission board, 2 months later. This one looks like it should be simple enough. He coughed out as he took a mission from the C-rank board. That actually looks easy, Naruto said with surprise as his Byakugan allowed him to see what was written on it. The other two looked at him, and Heiichi shrugged, allowing him to explain. The mission objective is simply to deliver a package from one of the merchants here to the village leader of Kusagakure. It pays 2,800 ryo, so 700 for each of us. You're right, Ikumo muttered. It doesn't sound like any fighting will be involved. She paused and thought. It's only a C rank because it requires travel outside the village, isn't it? Heiichi nodded once. That is true. That is one of the ways a mission goes from D rank to C rank. The other main reason a mission may be C rank is if bandit encounters are probable, or if there is a chance that the team may encounter a ninja of mid-C rank or below in a battle. So we've got an easy mission? Daihi asked. Heiichi didn't nod or shake his head, rather, he looked at the mission's paper. Do not ever assume such a thing exists, he said. A mission's parameters are always subject to change. A mission is never over until we report to the Hokage its success, otherwise the rank of a mission can always go up. The risk to our lives is very real, even on such a easy mission as a simple courier one. Remember, never let your guard down and never underestimate the value of overpreparation. The genin squad listened to Heiichi's speech, ignoring the coughs as they had gotten used to them, and nodded. Hi, Heiichi-sensei. They answered. Alright, we will leave in 2 hours. Gather all the supplies necessary for this mission and meet at the east gate. Heiichi disappeared in a swirl of leaves, leaving Naruto, Daihi and Yakumo in the room. I guess we'll see each other in 2 hours. Daihi said and was suddenly consumed in black fire, before he disappeared in a swirling vortex of fire. Naruto and Yakumo looked at each other. Does he seem a little off to you? Naruto asked Yakumo, who thought a moment and shrugged. He's probably just excited to leave the village again. The Kurama heir said, and Naruto thought about it. You're probably right, he said as he saw Yakumo's yin chakra expand over her body and shadows envelop her body. See you at the gate, she said as she disappeared into nothingness as shadows swallowed her form, and he nodded before focusing his chakra and reverse summoning himself to his room through a seal he kept there. His room wasn't packed with too much in the way of furniture. He had a simple bed with white sheets and blue covers, a single dresser, a closet and 2 shelves filled with scrolls he had either written himself, bought from a traveling merchant, been given or checked out from the hyuga library. The walls were a pale white that normal hyuga had for their Byakugan. The most unique factor of his room, though, were 3 things. The first was that seals were written on the floor, walls and ceiling of his room. The second was that items were littered over his room that could quickly be transported to his location through the 2-way space-time seals he had. The final was that on one wall was a desk covered in scrolls, paper tags, ink jars and brushes, his Fuinjutsu workshop. Glancing at the room, he tapped his chin. Well, what to do? He asked himself as he wanted to figure out how to best prepare for this mission. He heard a knock at the door, then come in, Gigi, he said, already knowing who it was. The old man came in, using a cane to walk. It was something he had taken to using 6 weeks ago and was the most obvious sign of his age. You're back earlier than I thought. No D ranks today. Naruto shook his head. Nope. Sensei is letting us take another C rank today. It's just a courier mission to Kusagakure no Sado, and the threat of bandits or opposing ninja is pretty small. Hito nodded and took a step inside, glancing around the room. I suppose you have some time to gather supplies? Hito asked, and Naruto held up 2 fingers. 2 hours. Have a shadow clone pack your supplies. I have something I want you to see before you go. This piqued Naruto's curiosity and he nodded, forming a cross-like hand seal with the first 2 fingers of both hands, and 2 clones popped into existence who already knew what to do. Hito laughed and Naruto followed right behind him. Silence reigned in their house as the 2 walked up a set of stairs and traveled down the hallway of the 2nd floor until they came to a bookcase on the left side of the hall. Gigi, Naruto asked. Patience, my boy. Hito lightly scolded as he held up his left hand in a ram seal, and it glowed a deep brown, signifying that he was molding earth chakra in a specific way. He pressed the tips of his 2 fingers still in the one-handed seal against the top shelf, and slid his hand down the bookcase. When he lifted his hand, Naruto was surprised by the result. The bookcase shimmered and then simply phased from existence. No, it disappeared into a storage seal, Naruto realized. In its place was a set of stone stairs leading downwards in a spiral formation. What is this? Naruto asked. You'll see, Hito said and led the way down. Naruto noted that the walls were lined with illumination seals, a type of Hyuinjutsu which lit up an area indefinitely by converting the chakra in an area into light energy and used the light to follow the form of his grandfather. When they reached the bottom of the stairs, the Uzumaki whistled as he saw the size of the chamber. Welcome, Naruto, to the ancient underground complex of the Uzumaki. Is this under Konoha? Hito shook his head. I have no idea where it is. All I know is that there is an entrance to it here through this house. I was given the instructions on how to create the entrance by Maiko Koi. She gave me a sealing array which I placed in my branch's house which leads to this place. There are other entrances, but all of them are currently closed off, and so I can't get to them from here. Wow, Naruto breathed in surprise. The arrays needed for that are rather impressive. And so is this, Naruto said as he looked around the newest scenery. The complex, this room at least, was a large stone chamber lit by more illumination seals, and it looked to be some sort of training ground, if the elemental absorption seals on the walls and the various wooden targets and dummies set up. Not to mention the wide arsenal of weaponry that was hanging on one of the walls, and an entire library's worth of scrolls that were set up on two of the walls, and looked to be protected by a multi-layered barrier, if his Byakugan was seen clearly. The final wall had a single, large door which led to a hallway holding multiple doors. That is, the entire complex is a large system which I haven't even fully explored. I also know where a few of the other exits are, but they are locked from the other side, and I just don't have any time to go looking for them around the elemental nations. That's not something a ninja can do, he said sadly. But I have had a chance to figure out the rough locations of a few of the entrances based on how space-time is distorted down here, and the history of the Uzumaki clan, as written in some of the scrolls here. Naruto's eyes widened. There are scrolls here about the Uzumaki's history. Hito nodded once. There are, my boy. For decades I have kept this place a secret to everyone of Konohagakure. I can't do that much longer though, so I need to let you finally have it. I have acted as guardian for far too long, but you are now old enough to bear this burden. I showed you this place now because I may not be here when you return. Naruto's eyes widened. No. Don't say that, Jiji. Naruto exclaimed, his voice echoing in the open area. He saw the old man smile sadly. It is true, my boy. I have only a short time. I've done my best to try and hide it, but I am sick, Naruto. I am slowly dying from a disease that has plagued my branch for generations. I believed Tsunade was the one who named our problem neurofibrossis. She explained it as tumors filling our central nervous system, slowly killing us painfully. Mine has already spread through parts of my legs and lungs, and my only saving grace is that it somehow has left my chakra untainted. It is only a matter of time before suddenly Hito fell into a raspy coughing fit, and when he removed his hand from his mouth, blood coated his palm. Gigi, why didn't you tell me before? Naruto asked quietly. Maybe I could have studied medical seals more and neglected the rest of your training. Hito asked with a smile. I don't think so. How could I be responsible for you doing something like that? What? Hito paused momentarily and winced in pain. What sort of grandfather would I be then? Deijiji. Hito smiled and reached into his robe, handing Naruto a scroll. There is one last thing. This scroll here was a gift from your Bachan. I was to give it to you on my deathbed, but I don't know if you'll be here when that happens. So, the only thing I have to say is I love you, Naruto, my boy. Once I'm gone, this branch will be under your control, and I know you'll make me proud. Naruto's eyes brimmed with tears, turning completely crimson, not pale crimson as usual, but a bright red which shone in the pale light of the complex. He saw into Hito's body, saw the very life force of the man weak, and he knew in his heart's heart that there wasn't anything he could do except one thing. I will make you proud, Jiji. Naruto said and hugged the man, trying his best not to hurt the one person who had been there for him all the time. There is also something I must tell you, Naruto. Hito whispered to the boy. Something regarding Konoha and the Uzumaki clan which I have come to find out. As I have little time left, I feel you should know this. Know what? Naruto asked, looking at Hito intently. The truth behind the Uzumaki clan's massacre. And I'm ending it right there. Because I'm evil. Now scene and location change, village hidden in the grass. Be extreme subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby you can be the director of your opponent's fate. Away from his house in the compound, Naruto calmly walked. Outwardly he seemed to show no changes, though his crimson Dijutsu was glowing. It was so bright instead of the dull red it generally was. He firmly had placed himself inside the void, all emotion gone from him and placed outside of himself. Outwardly he was fine. As he walked at that sedate pace through the compound, though inside he was absolute chaos. His heart was beating quick. His mind was in overdrive. Under the cold demeanor, his blood ran boiling hot. The truth of the Uzumaki massacre is a secret guarded by the highest powers here in Konoha. Vito's voice still rang in his ears, echoing in his head. To learn the truth, you have to know the cover-up first. Uzushio was feared among the 5 great villages because of their immense power, rivaling the Senju, Uchiha, Hyuga and Kaguya clans. They only consisted of a single clan, but that clan had multiple branches that may as well have been clans themselves, since each branch had their own unique bloodlines. The common traits among them were enough to bring the Uzumaki under the Whirlpool banner, though. This family had believed blood holds more loyalty than any village, that your clan should triumph the decisions of any cage. The branches helped one another without expectations of being repaid. The village's strength was that each person would gladly give their life for the next person to survive. Such a philosophy protecting those precious to them, it gave them strength. There was no true Yuzukichi. Each of the branches had a representative which made up the Whirlpool Council and convened to come to decisions that affected the village as a whole. Each branch itself also had their own council to decide affairs within them. This method of governing meant that Yuzushio, unlike other villages, had no head. If one of the branch heads died, an heir would take their place, nurtured by the rest of the village. Not only that, but since family was so important, they would be likely to hold a vendetta against the culprit responsible for their fathers, their mothers, their siblings, their cousins, their aunt or uncle or son or daughter's death. One death could very well bring down an entire whirlpool of bloody fury upon the assassin, should their identity become known to any Uzumaki. They were also strong enough to back up such a way of living. Different branches of the Uzumaki held different strengths. The tree Uzumaki, the branch which all others split from, your branch I might add, was extremely powerful. They were known for many abilities including Fuinjutsu, Kenjutsu and Chakra reserves so high they could fight for days without tiring. Many branches held different sub-elemental natures as well, most of which involved water, though there are records of some holding Kekkai Genkai, such as the Shakutan, Byakugan and Jitan. That was mostly due to having a parent bearing a Kekkai Tauta, and simply not gaining all three elements, only two. The records in this complex reveal the reason being that the matriarch of the clan, Otsutsuki Benahem, had access to all 7 elemental natures and all sub-elemental natures, and her descendants are gifted with the ability to meld their elements easier than others. Naruto sighed and reached the gate of the Hyuga compound, exiting without resistance and entering Konoha. His eyes saw every movement, every person, and he ignored them while easily gliding through crowds of civilians and shinobi alike. They were a formidable force to be reckoned with. Graceful, intelligent, intimidating. One wrong move and you would be swept up in a bloody current. 3 villages found that out the hard way. They saw them in the shadows, those Anbu watching over the populace. Their masks hiding identities of those he might recognize, masks useless against him as his eyes saw through even them. A new light was shed on his eyes today, and he saw them differently now. Guridakur, Kumagakur and Awagakur launched a deadly strike on the island. The Mist's navy carried platoons of ninja from all 3 villages. Whirlpools created by seals were useless against tens of thousands of ninja using suiton at once to alter their currents, just enough for the warships to land on the coasts. Hito's revelation placed his views in the correct direction, and his Byakugan were seen clearly for once. Disruptions in those seals gave the ninja ample warning though. As the warships neared, leviathans rose from the seas and took down 2 ships before being dispelled. The soldiers sent were no Chunin, and these were deadly Anbu and elite Jounin trained to kill. Other summons were sent after the ships. Phoenix, Yukiana, Raiju. Perhaps had Maiko and her elemental dragons been there, the tides may have shifted more to their favor. He saw the looks everyone gave another. Those distrustful glances that patrons and shopkeepers gave one another, paranoid looks passerby, sent another as if afraid the next one would mug them, leers naughty men sent to even mildly attractive women, and a fear their eyes held of a group of thugs taking advantage of them. Over all the almost crimes and near sins, the Anbu stood watch, guarding the village's safety, prolonging the existence of these people. They weren't living, this was not life, not the sunnies. They existed, hoping to go another moment without darkness permeating their false light. As they landed, they died even then. Against even less than a fraction of Uzumaki compared to their large battalion of both clan and clanless ninja from 3 of the great villages, they still dropped like flies. Over generations, the Uzumaki had built a style utilizing their tremendous teamwork, which covered each branch's weakness with the strength of another branch. Seals kept barriers up to protect the village until even they succumbed to barraging of A and S rank ninjutsu. While the Uzumaki had quality ninja, probably the best in the nations, the Iwakumo Kiri Alliance had numbers. Even the enduring Uzumaki clan succumbed to exhaustion. They reached a point where the crowds were so packed, it would require time to get through. Instead of waiting against currents of those dark beings who simply existed, Naruto mimicked the Guardians of Darkness, those Anbu, and took to the rooftops in order to travel at an easier pace. Even from his heightened vantage, he still was unable to lose sight of those ever-present feelings underneath the eyes of all his eyes saw. Death took the force of your brethren one by one. With each soul the Shinigami stole, the opposing force gained an advantage. Less Uzumaki meant the balance of power shifted ever in the favor of the other 3 villages. The price was drastic though, thousands of ninja lost for a single Uzumaki to discontinue breathing. There were less than 1,000 of your clansmen fighting the front lines, and the 3 villages' forces paid a heavy toll to take them down. Naruto stopped as his eyes caught something strange. He focused and his eyes turned milky white, allowing him greater range in order to see what he had glimpsed more carefully. It was a light among the darkness. He spied Daihi and Yakumo together, laughing. Their eyes had that darkness, but they also had light. There were others too with that light, he knew. Hitojiji had it, Hanada-sama and Hanabi-sama, Hanko-sensei, Hyuga-sensei, Kurenai-sensei, Hana-sensei, Heiate-sensei. There were lights among the darkness. They had no knowledge that while those less than 1,000 noble shinobi in Kinwaichi fought, others were evacuated out of the village. Children and those not able to fight at the level needed for warfare were safely led and escaped. They scattered over the nations. Others more powerful did as well, those out on missions, but I have no knowledge on anything regarding them. Your family is out there though, Naruto-kun. These lights he had found in his dark world, he only hoped he could somehow keep them from being snuffed out. But the truth of the invasion now, I have no love for what I must impart upon you right now. Most of the defenses keeping Konohagakure no Sato safe are run by Uzumaki clan seals, and those Senju Hashirama, our Shadame Hokage, trusted his wife's clan, others did not. When he died and his brother took the hat and robe, he began a few underhanded plans. Nadame Hokage Senju Tabarama was quite pragmatic, you see. I speak from experience under his command. After decades of careful prying and snooping, calling in favors and fishing out facts from rumors, the truth became known to me. He feared that one day the two villages might not be so close and wished to get rid of a threat before it became too much to handle. The other three villages were only too happy to agree, for a price of course. He slowed his breathing and calmed himself. It was all he could do right now. That knowledge drove him to the edge just thinking about it. How could anyone stay calm when that veil was lifted from their eyes? All I can say is do what you feel is best, Naruto-kun. I don't know what path you will go down once I'm gone, but I know that you'll do the best to follow your dreams and achieve your goals. I'll be proud of you no matter what. Now, go and leave this old man to his thoughts. I only want one thing from you. Promise that you'll find your clan and keep them together for me and for your Bachan. I promise, Naruto whispered to himself and saw the gate down below. With a single chakra-enhanced leap, he landed there, the last of his team to arrive. Escaping the void, Naruto gave his squad a fake smile. Sorry I'm late, Hitojiji had something to give me and held me up a little bit. Heiate waved it off. Just don't make it a habit, Naruto. You're ready now. He nodded and pale white eyes became violet, allowing him full range vision for 150 meters in all directions. That extra bit had come with training and was well worth the hours of focus. You have the package, sensei. Yakumo asked and he held up a scroll in one hand with a nod before tucking it in his vest. The trip should be no more than 3 days there and 3 days back, 2 days in the village itself. On the off chance we are actually attacked, stay together and have each other's back. Alone we are strong, together we are more so. Nodding their understanding, the trio followed as Heiate sped off and took to the treetops, leaping from branch to branch masterfully. Heiate had point, Naruto watching their rear with Yakumo on the left covering the Ninjutsu and Heiate on the right, ready to release an Enten ninjutsu at a moment's notice. Silence reigned over the group, and Naruto took the opportunity to begin molding his chakra within himself, channeling it to his ears as Hana-sensei had showed him. It was a technique created by Orochimaru, but vastly useful as anyone could utilize it to increase their hearing by exponential levels, similar to the Inuzuka's ability to mimic a dog's level of smell, by channeling chakra to their nose, thanks to their physical bloodline. By enhancing his ears, he heard the fluttering of insects nearby, the breeze ruffling over fallen, autumn leaves, despite it being still 2 weeks to October. Konoha's summer seemed to end earlier this year than before. He couldn't help but feel it was a sign of some sort. Shaking those stray thoughts away, he refocused and kept his sight and hearing alert, trying to locate any threats to his squad. That was his main priority and main role. Heiate took point to ensure he could lead them at a high enough pace, and also to make certain any enemies before them could be dealt with quickly as possible. Yakumo kept them shrouded in illusions to keep any possible enemies from locating them. Daihi was responsible for long-range support to take out any enemies before they got too close. He was on watch to warn the others if anyone approached. Using these roles, the squad had come to successfully complete already 2 courier missions and 1 escort missions. This would make their 5th C rank. Because of the success rate they had, the 3 genin hadn't been on any D ranks for weeks, a fact they were glad for. It gave more time for their training, both under Heiate and under other sensei. The squad continued for a few hours before Heiate motioned for them to take a break, and they landed in a clearing below. Nearly instantly upon their feet hitting ground, the 3 genin already tossed kunai to form a triangle around them, and Naruto had set up a sound barrier. We're about a kilometer from the first village we'll be sleeping in on our trip, Gihen no Seido. I know an innkeeper there who owes me a favor, so beds and meals will be free. When we get there, I expect you to lose your hit-eye and act like civilians. Seal your weapons and Naruto, keep your violet eyes up the whole time. Why all the precautions, sensei? Daihi asked. We are shinobi, Daihi. Our greatest tools are surprise and deception. If someone looking for Konoha Shinobi is expecting to see the leaf headbands and looking only for those, they may just ignore us. The three of you are skilled enough in skills other than Bukijutsu that I'm confident you can easily take on many low-level shinobi without them. You are already easily Chunin level by this point, and no non-shinobi could beat you. Working together, you are easily capable of taking on even B and maybe A rank nin. Of this I am certain. Arigato, sensei. The trio spoke as one. Yakumo then tilted her head and asked Hate something that made him grin. If we're at such a level, does that mean you nominated you three for the exams? Hate asked. I was going to wait for the mission to be finished and us to be back in Konoha, but yes, I have. The Hokage was rather surprised, as was I, upon learning that all the rookie squads are participating. As such, this is the last mission we will be taking before the exams. The rest of the time will be used for training and preparation for said exams. Hey-sensei. He looked at Naruto. Will the other squads be doing the same? The sword-wielding Jounin pondered this a moment before nodding. Wouldn't it be in everyone's best interest then to have the squads perform training sessions with one another? Surely helping another train couldn't hurt. Hei coughed and sighed. I agree with your philosophy, but not all do. I am not against such a plan, but we are getting off track. Go ahead and seal your weapons and headbands, then we'll make our way to Giha no Sato at a civilian pace. Anyone who sees us will assume we are just a family traveling. And if there happens to be a censor type in this hypothetical group hunting us? Daihi asked. Yakumo hit him atop his head. That's what the chakra suppression exercises we've been practicing are for. She scolded. That's easy for you to say, Yakumo. The Fenikusu argued. You and Naruto have perfect chakra control, but what about me? The smirk Naruto held told Daihi the answer was unpleasant. The bit of Juiken could make up for your lack in training. He pointed out while his palm glowed visibly with chakra, a light blue that made Daihi swallow. He looked to his sensei who coughed into his fist. You should have trained harder. Was his reply, all the answer Naruto needed before grinning. Busagakure no Sato, 3 days later. I never knew how much I could miss this die, he said, referring to his hit once more around his forehead and the sword once more strapped to his back. The trio had spent the last 3 days traveling treetops and the ground, alternating when they neared the 2 villages they slept in, Shindu, a small town on the edge of Hai no Kuni, and Hanamai, one of the larger cities in Kusa no Kuni. They had just crossed a gate, Hate warning them they were representatives of Konohagakure while they were here in an allied village. Enjoy it while it lasts, Daihi. Naruto said. You know how paranoid Sensei is, he'll probably make us do the same thing on the way back. Yeah, Sensei. What was the point of that? Yakumo asked. Hate pondered his answer a moment before speaking. Training, he said. There are times when you must use your mind instead of your body. Some missions require a strong shinobi to barrel through enemies. Others require the squad to be able to use stealth, psychology and misdirection in order to put a kunai into a target's back. Remember that a sharp mind always beats a strong fist. The genin quietly thought about that as they walked. Why don't you three explore a little? I can deliver this package to the client. We can meet back at the hotel we'll be staying at, it's called the Hiding Snake. Sure, Sensei. I bet there's somewhere good to eat here. Come on Yakumo, Rito. Daihi said. The blonde smiled to him. I'll catch up. I need to get some more Fuinjutsu supplies and some other stuff while we're here. The 2 minor clansmen looked at the Hyuga. I can easily find you here, I swear. Okay, Naruto-kun, Yakumo said. Meet us at the hotel then. He smiled to them and disappeared in a shunshin of 5 elements, while the other 2 sighed and walked off together. He's been acting strange these last few days. I noticed, Yakumo. Daihi sighed. We can't push him though. When he's ready he'll tell us. Though it does trouble me he attempted to fool us with that fake smile and mask. The brunette held her arms and sighed. I hate seeing him like this. The worst part is he's not even suffering in his skills, he's just as top-notch as always. He just locks his emotions away when he needs to, and puts up fake ones when he wants to fool us. He couldn't help but to chuckle. I guess Hate-sensei didn't even need to teach Naruto this lesson on deception. If we hadn't known him for years, I'm sure he would have had us fooled too. He stopped, causing Yakumo to stop as well. How about here? She looked at where he was gesturing and saw it was a simple establishment, no fancy ornamentation, and called Ryuijin's. Looking in the windows showed patrons sitting in diner-style tables with bench-like seats on both sides of them. The food seemed to he akin to the Akimichi's barbecue-style cooking, but had differences as well. Are you sure? She asked. Yeah, can't hurt to try it, right? He pointed out. She shrugged and the 2 walked in, taking a table across from one another. Taking the menus on the table in hand, the words on it seemed strange to them. As a waitress approached and saw their looks, she smiled. Hello and welcome to Ryuijin's. My name is Hanako and I'll be your server. Hanako-san, what sort of food is this? Yakumo asked and the brunette waitress mild-eyed her, showing white teeth. Her hands were holding a pen and pad in front of her body, dressed in a pink dress fitted to show curves and ending at her knees. Well, my two-chan, Ryuujin, spent some time in the western lands. This is a specialty of their continent involving both grills and a type of cooking called deep frying. The food is quite delicious, but I must warn you that eating too much is a bit tough to work off to keep your figure for your boyfriend. She whispered the last to Yakumo, grinning and glancing from her to Daihi as the brunette blushed. Are you okay, Yakumo? Daihi asked her while Hanako giggled. Brass Tower, village leader's office. Welcome to my village, Height-san. The village leader spoke with a calm tone. She was a dark-skinned woman with multiple braids of snow-white hair, despite the fact she looked no older than her late 20s, possibly early 30s. She wore a green Jounin uniform with a matching flak jacket, a fedora seemingly made out of grass weaved together, and her kusa hit-eyed around her neck, the cloth of forest green. The honor is mine, Hanabira-san. Height replied with a bow of his head. I have the package you ordered from Kanahagakure sealed in this scroll. He revealed said item after removing it from his own flak jacket. He handed it to her, and she spoke as she opened it. I hope your trip went well, Height-san. She asked. There were no complications. Height replied as she unsealed the parcel within in a cloud of smoke. It revealed itself to be a sword, a katana that Height saw was very finely made. Yes, this is perfect. She will be ecstatic. Hanabira mumbled. Height did not make any comment. He was all business with clients, and if they chose to impart information to him, so be it. Height-san, my sources tell me one of your students is in Uzumaki. The man immediately tensed, looking at the white-haired woman. Hi, he said, knowing there were Anbu in the room. He was incapable of doing anything. And this woman, while no cage, still was powerful if she was the village leader. I also have some members of that particular clan in my village. One woman and her daughters as well as her adopted son, though he is not of the clan. They make up my finest genin squad in the whole village. I don't have many ninja to begin with, but they are a rookie squad that makes some chewin and have to work hard to keep up. This sword is a gift to the eldest from me in exchange for training my little sister, Ryuzetsu, in the art of kinjutsu. Height studied the woman carefully. What purpose does telling me this do? Purpose? Do not be so cynical as to believe I am telling you in order to manipulate events in my favor. I'm simply pointing out a fact. Maybe the Hokage would like to hear of this, or maybe I am trusting you not to let any prying ears in Konoha know of this. Maybe it is simply conversation. Perhaps this doesn't matter and we are simply at a deadlock because neither can outmaneuver the other in this game of words. This woman confused Height greatly, but he schooled his features so he could give off the impression of boredom. If the last is the case, might I go then? Hanabira smiled sweetly, innocently. Why, of course. I'm not holding you hostage. I hope you find your hotel comfortable. And I wish your team luck in the upcoming exams. My genin squad will be there as well, Height-kun. Somehow, the honorific gave Height a chill as he left, and he wasted no time in using a Konoha Shunshin to leave the tower. He needed to find his team, and fast. Fusagakure, ninja shop. Naruto entered the shop, hoping to find sealing supplies at this one. The last 3 had been cleaned out apparently. He was alone in the shop and smirked when he saw a shelf of ink and scrolls, completely stocked. He headed to the front counter where an elderly brown-haired and brown-eyed man stood, reading a book, though not the orange one Kurenai-sensei hated with a passion. Excuse me, sir. He looked up. Konoha. Don't get customers from your village often, my boy. He stood straight. How can I help you? I was looking to purchase some sealing supplies. Just enough until I get back to my village. The man nodded but sighed. I'm afraid I'm the bearer of bad news today, son. That there along the wall is reserved for one of the clans here in Kusagakure. I'm sure the other shops will tell you the same. Maybe if you convince them to sell you some, but besides that you'll get none. He sighed. Dealing with a clan that was not something he had planned nor wanted to do here while in a foreign village and country. If they were like the hyuga, then it would be impossible to get anything, and he might walk out promising his firstborn in the process. Just as he went to talk, the door opened and a bell rung in the store. He turned though it was unnecessary, and saw a girl his age walk in. She was a redhead with the brightest hair he'd ever seen, red eyes that shone bright as his crimson Byakugan had taken to doing recently with slim spectacles over them, and wore a purple button-up coat that flared outwards at the bottom to show her short shorts of the same color. Her skin was a tan matching his own, and she wore a sultry smirk on her face as her eyes met his. Ah, Karen. Here to pick up your mother's order. Oh, sure Hijin. I can wait until you finish up with this one though. She walked forward, her eyes scanning Naruto's body. Hijin chuckled. Well, then you're up anyways. He was looking to buy some sealing supplies, but your mother seems to have cleaned all the shops out again. Karen, as she had been called, kept her eyes on the blonde and smiled. I don't know, maybe a deal can be made. She whispered into his ear, making the boy shiver. Recovering, Naruto smiled back. I would greatly appreciate it, Karen-san. He was about to say hyuga but stopped himself for some reason. Uzumaki Naruto, at your service. Immediately, the kunoichi widened her eyes, and the shopkeep glanced between them. She looked him up and down once more, and her smirk fell back in place. Give him half of them, Hijin. Free of charge. Nani? Naruto was confused. All you have to do is prove it. Prove you're in Uzumaki and I'll give them to you. Naruto looked between the two and thought a moment to come up with a way to do as she said. The only way I know how would be my seals. But only another Uzumaki would be able to decode them enough to acknowledge I am who I say, he said. Karen tapped her chin with a slim finger and delicate index finger. I've got a better idea. Stop suppressing your chakra so I can feel it, she said. No Uzumaki would have so little chakra, not even a clanless genin would. Don't suppress it even a little so I can feel it exactly, every detail. You're a censor? Naruto inquired. The best in Kusagakure. Now do it. Naruto nodded and breathed deeply before releasing the pressure his chakra had on itself, in order to keep it as bound and small as possible. Immediately, Karen's eyes widened. They amazing even more than Akasama or One-san. But can he be in Uzumaki? He has sun gold hair, I mean those crimson orbs are in Uzumaki trait I suppose. Then his chakra his affinities remarkable. Akasama will want to know this, but I can't introduce him to her just yet. It might mess with her plans. You are in Uzumaki, Naruto-kun. Karen said finally. How long are you here in Kusa? Tomorrow, he said and tilted his head. Why did you care if I was though? Karen simply smiled mysteriously. Oh, I don't think I should tell you. Not yet. Are you a genin? He nodded, though confused why she asked. In 6 weeks I'll be in your village and I'll tell you then. She sensuously placed a hand on his cheek and slowly caressed it. Look for me, okay Naruto-kun. The blonde blushed heavily and could only nod as she turned to leave, swaying her hips just so. I'll be waiting, Naru-kun. Don't disappoint me, I think you like the reward if you show up. As she was about to leave, she looked at Hiran. Give him all of them, my present to you. See you in 6 weeks at the exams. Hiran waved his hand in front of Naruto's dazed form, getting no reaction. He chuckled to himself. That Karen still he began sealing the supplies for the blonde and frowned. To think that two Uzumaki would be in his shop at once by accident and not know each other. Perhaps the gods had plans for those two. In his experience, coincidences didn't exist. Keep an eye on Naruto. Hito is the only family he had, and with his death I pray the QP doesn't take advantage of it. Do you understand, Nico? Hi, Hokage-sama. And watch him Yuigao had been doing. The purplinette couldn't help but grasp her katana as she did so. It wasn't for any danger to herself or her charge, but to comfort herself. She needed to make sure it was still there, and stroking the hilt helped her calm down. It wasn't anger that messed with her nerves, it was watching her student of a few months in his training ground, his personal training ground in the Hyuga compound. With Hito gone, he was the final member of his branch of the main house, placing him as head of said branch. For the last several hours the blonde Hyuga had been training in a way she never saw him do. It was the type of high-level training many shinobi did after losing someone extremely important to them. It was either that, drink or lose yourself in grief. Sword flashing through the air, the Uzumaki created several icicles that sped forward and killed another clone, but there were plenty more in its place. This protection mission had shed light on Yugao's understanding of just how powerful her student was. Alone, he was mid-chunin level, maybe high. Add in his ability to create literally an army or two of both shadow and elemental clones, thanks to his Uzumaki reserves and his Hyuga control, and that level vastly increased. That very ability was what Naruto was using to train his Kenjutsu. In the absence of his sensei in the art of the sword, aka her, he was using a massive Kage Bunshin to train on multiple levels. On the first, he was simply training his ability to use Shiva against many opponents at once. The second purpose was utilizing the fact that shadow clones relay information to the creator upon dispelling, allowing him to see his openings in both his doppelgangers and himself. Yet another aspect was having his shadow clones utilize the fighting style he was forming for himself between Fuinjutsu and the Tenseigan, thereby training in those at the same time. On top of everything, he was simply relieving stress and grieving in his own way. Yuigao admitted that the entire method was quite ingenious, though only he would be able to use it. Maybe another Uzumaki or Jinchuriki as well. It did give her a few ideas on altering her own training regimen for the better though. Shaking her head to clear such stray thoughts, Yuigao looked at her student once more. She bore witness as he spun rapidly to block multiple projectiles thrown his way using the Iwakin's divine rotating boulder, a defense trumping even the Jukin's Katen. To her surprise, suddenly the boulder became spiked and they shot outward, dispelling dozens of clones simultaneously. That was new. Perhaps he had achieved a variation on the defensive maneuver by looking in Hito's scrolls. For another hour, Hyuga watched the fight rage on, Naruto taking quite a beating by his own hands, but also taking out each and every one of his clones in the process. Training into exhaustion was not an uncommon method of training. It served two main purposes. It allowed one to gain the maximum amount of training time, and it also increased one's chakra reserves once they're recovered. Hyuga fondly remembered Kushina doing such a thing to her, Furia and Itachi to make them better faster. It was a bit of a feud between her and Minato, in all honesty. They wanted to see whose students could be better, she always thought. Then again, Minato's only remaining student by the time Kushina got her team had been Kakashi, so maybe it was simply that she wanted them to have as much skill as possible to survive. Well, with all three becoming Anbu captains before their 15th birthday, Kushina did a wonderful job. It was just unfortunate that Itachi-kun had gone Nukenin on them. More thoughts Hyuga had to shake away to focus. She disappeared in a swirl of leaves down to Naruto's unconscious form and checked his vitals. He was stable, just overly exhausted, as she thought. Picking him up, the Anbu captain carried him to the house belonging to him and brought him to his room. Placing him on the bed, she looked around though she had been here before. The room was covered in designs and notes all over the walls, stacks of pages all over his desk. In only 2 days the room went from organized to this. Crossing her arms, Hyuga frowned. She didn't know what he was obsessing over right now, but she hoped he accomplished it. Placing her hand on the hilt of her katana, Hyuga disappeared into the shadows as only Anbu can. Hokage office. Garrison sighed to himself and took a puff of his pipe as he looked at a certain sheet of paperwork on his desk. It was official upon Hito's passing. Naruto was a named council member of the Hyuga clan. The main house had only 5 in addition to the clan head. That way, should the clan head and all heirs die, there were 5 possible candidates for the position. The problem was that with the position, he became the head of household within a clan. Sensei, there has to be some way around the law. Jiraiya asked and looked pleadingly at the old man. Though he had not been in Naruto's life, he still had a certain responsibility to the kid. There is none. Hiruzen stated. I will make the announcement following the Chunin exams, Jiraiya. I will need to give him some training in between now and then. Unfortunately, I have my doubts on whether he will sign your contract. He has his sights dead set on another one, a legendary contract in fact. This is despite the fact he has 2 others in his possession. The white-haired man raised an eyebrow. 2 contracts unsigned. Dito's mole contract and the wildcat contract he obtained on his first C-rank mission. I've no doubt they will become clan contracts for him, but he only wants 1 summons. The elemental dragon contract of Uzumaki Maiko is his desire, and nothing will sway him, not even his teacher's offers have had any effect. Jiraiya whistled lowly. That's a mighty will. I can teach him some other things though, sensei. Doesn't he have the rest of the time off for training as ordered by Jekuhei? Hiruzen nodded. Then I'll use that time. Not all of it, you won't, the Sandame stated. He is also learning skills from Anbu Captain Yazuki Uegao, Jounin Yuuhi Kurenai, Takebetsu Jounin Mitarashi Anko and Chunin Inyuzuka Hana. He doesn't want to become specialized, and so he's been taking lessons to broaden his range. According to Uegao, he is extremely strong for a rookie genin. I have no doubt he will make Chunin in the upcoming exams. Hi, sensei. When can I speak with him? Jiraiya asked. I will schedule it for tomorrow. Be civil, but also express the need for him to learn when you converse. He will no doubt know how strong you are and realize the upside of learning from you. I have already spoken to Heiate and he has told me that he is supportive of this decision. The Kumo-chan will be learning from her clan, while he will be taught by a combination of his elder sister and Heiate himself. Sounds good, sensei. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go do some research. In a cloud of smoke, Jiraiya left and Hiruzen groaned, already knowing the extra paperwork this would cause. Oh, how I wish you were here, Minato. For more reason than one. Hiruzen shook his head and looked at the stack of papers on his desk, placing the one concerning Naruto in his desk drawer. Naruto will need more protection than he has very soon, if only you were here to teach him. Or even you, Kushina. Taking another puff of his pipe, the Kami no Shinobi looked at the papers again, deciding he may as well begin. Training Ground 8. Sensei. Kurenai looked up to see Hinata, pressing fingers together. Hey, are you alright? The crimson-eyed Ravenet looked at one of her 2 Hyuga students strangely. We were spaced out, Kiba said simply. We all finished the control exercise while you were daydreaming. A bark from Akamaru confirmed the Inizuka heir's statement. I'm fine, Kurenai replied to her team. Bano, sensei, is it Naruto-kun? Hinata asked, causing Kiba and Shino to glance at one another. The Jinjutsu mistress. Naruto. Like Hinata's cousin Naruto. Kiba wondered. I believe his guardian passed recently, if I remember right. Shino commented. Yes to all of you. Kurenai said after a few moments. 2 of my friends and myself have taken to teaching him in our spare time, as a way to repay his late mother. She was like a mother to me after my own died. Kushina-sensei, she saw everyone as family since she lost her entire clan. And now you are worried for his well-being following Hito-sen's death? Shino inquired. That I am. Just as I would worry for any of you if someone close to you were to pass into the next world. You are all 4 my students even though he is not a part of our team. I care for all of you equally. The HR group of genin were silent a moment as that sunk in. Why not invite him to train with us? Kiba asked. Kurenai, Hinata and Shino looked at him. I don't know, training helps me get my mind off of bad things, so maybe he's the same. Plus, we never really hung out in the academy, and it would be a good way for all of your students to bond, sensei. I agree with Kiba-san, Shino said. It would fulfill many different purposes including accelerating all of our training and enhancing our teamwork. Kurenai looked at the Hyuga heiress of her team who nodded once, conviction in her eyes. Naruto-kun has always helped me when I needed it, and I would like to return the favor. I have yet to hit him in training, but I'm sure if we all train together everyone will get better. Kurenai couldn't help but smile to herself and to her team. I'll talk with him and with Hate then. I seem to recall Naruto saying something about wanting inter-team training. Hyuga Library. The Uzumaki clan were one of the strongest shinobi clans to ever exist, on par with even the Senju, Hyuga, Uchiha and Kaguya clans. Centered around their island of Yuzu no Kuni with their own hidden village, Yuzushiogakure, the many branches of the clan coexisted without dispute, an entire village of shinobi who were family. Their most famous aspect was the bloodline the entire clan, every branch, shared. This bloodline was a dominant trait, always born into every infant to varying degrees. Said bloodline consisted of a healing factor massively trumping that of any clan, a natural immunity to nearly all poisons and toxins, a natural affinity towards Fuinjutsu, extremely high chakra reserves, and endurance levels no other clan could boast. Other bloodlines of the clan included many sub-elements, an unnaturally high affinity towards Suiton, and the strange attribute of Uzumaki blood to enhance other bloodlines, when another clan and an Uzumaki had a child. It is also rumored, though untested, that should an Uzumaki get a blood transfusion from a member of another branch of their clan, that they would activate their bloodline within weeks. Some of the more famous members include Uzumaki Mido, Uzumaki Kushina, Uzumaki Maiko, Shade Muzukage Uzumaki Tsunami, and Nide Muzukage Uzumaki Arashi. The clan itself suffered a near genocide during the Second Shinobi World War, and the surviving members have been scattered throughout the elemental nations. The Nabi frowned and sighed. This wouldn't help cheer her Nai-chan up. Even young as she was at only 10, Yuga Hanabi understood death, and she saw the aftereffects of Hito's death on Naruto. She hadn't really known the old man that well, and all she knew was that he was one of the strongest Yuga to ever live. His Iwakin had been a fierce style. She knew that firsthand thanks to Naruto Nai. Pursing her lips, the heiress blew out an exasperated breath. What was she supposed to do? Well, there was his birthday soon, now that she thought about it. Could she not just plan an amazing party and pray it worked? Nodding to herself, she was decided. But who could help her? Otsutsuki was too busy. Hinata was not nearly aggressive enough. Aggressive? That gave her an idea. There was one more person she knew who would want to help cheer Naruto Nai up. She's just scary. Hanabi shivered as she thought. I hope she doesn't decide to feed me to her pets. Hokage-sama. Naruto stood before the Hokage, seemingly no difference in him despite his guardian's death. On one side of the old man, the Hyuga noted a man with snowy spikes that flowed down his back, markings under his eyes, and a strange horned Hittite. Hyuga-sensei told me you wished to see me. Ah, Naruto-kun, yes. He smiled, looking at the blonde. As you know, the Chunin exams will be here in just over a month. Nodding once, Naruto glanced at the other man before once more looking back at Hiruzen. It will be held here in Konohagakure for the first time in 5 years. We want to present ourselves as well as we possibly can to the nobles that will show up in the third exam. Of course, Hokage-sama. Naruto nodded his understanding. Do I have something to do with that? Hiruzen smiled. Ever observant as any Hyuga. In fact, you are a major player. Your missions have caught the attention of a few nobles already, ones that want to see just how strong you are. It would be best for both the village and you if you were to give them a good show of the skills from all sides of your family. Naruto frowned at this. I'm sorry, Hokage, I don't quite follow you, he admitted. Maybe I can explain it then. The other man cut in, gaining a nod from the Hokage. I am the great sage of Mount Myaboku, Jiraiya of the Sannin and sensei to the Yondaime Hokage, your father, Namikaze Minato. The only reaction Naruto had to the man's strange dance was to give him a deadpan look, no emotion in his eyes. Right, he replied. I thought someone of your skill would be more. Jiraiya looked curiously at the boy, wondering what he would say. Intimidating. Jiraiya happens to be one of the strongest ninja of the village. Hiruzen pointed out to the young Uzumaki. Naruto nodded. I know this. Jiji taught me about many S-rank ninja, including the Sannin. I know that Jiraiya-san here is one of the strongest ninja to ever come from Konoha, and from no clan as well. I am well aware of his skill level, but such an immature act combined with his infamous naughty nature doesn't give him much respect outside of what his strength dictates. Naruto calmly stated, situated firmly in the void. Jiraiya crossed his arms, frowning. Well, I suppose you wouldn't want training from me then? He asked, straight to the point. Naruto frowned at that, trying to let that soak in. Glancing between the two men, confusion was evident in his eyes. Why? He finally asked. Jiraiya grinned at this. I taught your old man, and I know you'll be just as great as him from what you're already capable of. I know about all your teachers and your goals, from what sensei told me. I also know that you can appreciate the use of putting variation into your style. I have a lot I could teach you, so what do you say? The blonde scrunched his brow in thought before looking at Jiraiya once more. Alright, I could use your help, Jiraiya-sensei. I admit that learning from an S-rank shinobi is very enticing, but would you allow me to keep my schedule with my other teachers? I owe much of my style and strength to them, and I would not want to make them feel like I simply took advantage. Jiraiya grinned, nodding. Sure thing, kid. I'll be in training ground 27 tomorrow at noon. Be there on time and ready to train. Naruto nodded once. Now I'm off to research. He then disappeared in a cloud of smoke, not a trace left to suggest he ever was there. Naruto sighed, not even wanting to imagine what this research could be. The Three Women Sensei, he knew just what Jiraiya's novels were and how much or little women appreciated the smut. I hope Kurenai doesn't kill him before I can learn something, Naruto muttered, causing the Hokage to chuckle at the very idea. Though he suffered so much by Tsunade-chan's fists, I think he'll survive. Just make sure you make it on time. He doesn't appreciate tardiness. Suddenly the old man became serious. Naruto-kun, how are you holding up? Naruto had no reaction, such was the nature of the void, but inwardly he sighed. Vito Jiji would not have wished me to grieve for too long. I will honor his memory through what he taught and told me I will make him proud of me by becoming the greatest Hyuga Uzumaki to live. I have to finish my Tenseigan. Hardening his eyes, Naruto nodded to himself. By your leave, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen nodded, watching as Naruto left in a swirl of fire, wind, lightning, earth and water. Sighing, Hiruzen looked at the spot the heir to 3 clans just was. I hope he will be okay. Keep an eye on him, Nico. There was no response, but Hiruzen knew she had left from the shadow. Looking at his stacks of paperwork, the Sandaime pulled a page from the stack. The sooner he got this over with, the better. Then a 5-element swirl, Naruto appeared in the back of his house, where his training ground was. Immediately, he knew someone was there. Actually 2 familiar signatures as well as 2 he hadn't felt in quite some time. Focusing his eyes, he saw why as a group was standing in front of his door. Walking inside and through the empty dwelling, the boy walked to the front and opened it just as Kibba was about to knock again, surprising the boy. Hello, Kurenai-sensei, Hinata-sama, Kibba-san, Shino-san. To each of the quartet, he lowered his head a tad, Hinata getting more of an inclination than the others and Kurenai only slightly less than the heiress. 4 sets of eyes were focused only on him. How may I help you today? Naruto-san, are you quite all right? Shino asked, a slight amount of worry detectable in his usually cold voice. The blonde was curious until he looked at his clothing and smiled, rubbing the back of his head. I was training my Kazakin. He explained, noting the dozens if not hundreds of minuscule scratches all over his robe. With the cutting nature of wind added with a bunch of cage bunshin, well, they did a number on me. It was worth it though. Maybe I should have changed before seeing the Hokage and Jiraiya-sensei. He idly wondered. Then again. When the Hokage summons you by way of Anbu, you go then and there. Pays Ken. Kibba asked. What's that? A jutsu. Instead of Naruto, it was Hinata that answered in his place. Naruto-kun was taught by Hito-oji, one of the strongest Hyuga to live. Instead of the Juiken, like I use, Hito-oji created a version that used Earth Nature Chakra, a type of ninjutsu. Naruto-kun learned that from him, but has also spent the last 4 years attempting to create style based on all the elements. Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm getting closer on the Mizuken and Kazakin thanks to Anko-sensei showing me the Hibi Taijutsu, but Heiken and Reiken are a lot tougher. I need to learn more styles of Taijutsu until my Tenseigan style is perfected. Shino and Kibba looked at the boy. Shino's was unidentifiable, but Kibba showed a distinct smirk on his face. Well, if it's to jutsu, I'd love to see who's stronger, Naruto. He exclaimed rather loudly, gaining a bark of acceptance from Akamaru atop his head. Smiling, the hyuga nodded his head. I wouldn't mind. Everything is a learning experience, and I haven't had a chance to go against an Inuzuka and Taijutsu quite yet. Kiba smirked at that thought. Speaking of which, Naruto-kun Kurenai gained his attention, causing him to look at her. That's why we came, you see. With the Chunin exams coming up, Hyuga won't be able to help quite as often. Hana and I came to an agreement, if you're willing. Naruto tilted his head in curiosity. How would you feel about training with my team until the exams? Joy filled the boy's violet Byakugan instantly, a smile touching his lips. I would love to, Kurenai-sensei. He remarked. At the same time we usually train. Kurenai shook her head. A bit longer. Does that affect your schedule? Naruto nodded. Noon I will have another session with a certain author and ninja. Kurenai's eyes narrowed, but she smiled. Just don't pick up any habits, but I understand. Anytime you don't train with him, you're welcome at Training Ground 8 with my team. Naruto smiled with a nod. Looking up at the sun, he noted what it was getting close to lunch and looked at the squad. Would you like to come in for lunch? He asked them. One of my clones should be finishing the yakitori and rice now. At just that moment, Kiba's stomach happened to growl, eliciting a blush from him. May I take that as a yes then? It would be lovely, Naruto-kun. Kurenai noted, glancing at her genin. Shino, Hinata, Kiba. The three nodded in degrees varying from slight, meek and rapid, gaining a slight grin from Naruto, as he led them to his kitchen. As he had stated, a clone had a dish on the table that had 6 seats around it. Good thing I usually make more than enough in case I have visitors, he told them. I've had people coming every day since I returned. Mostly main branch hyuga looking to gain my favor and weten it. Well, I'm going to change into something with less holes, and then I'll join you. Make yourself at home. The boy left upstairs, leaving Squad 8 alone in his kitchen. Even the clone had dispelled after putting out 5 bowls on the table. They took seats, looking around the kitchen at different decorations. Hey, Hinata-chan, do you know who that is? Kiba asked as he looked at a hanging photo of Naruto and an old man. That's Hito. The brunette nodded. That's him. Naruto-kun was very close to him. She explained. Since he became a part of the clan, Naruto was always with Hito-oji. Even at the council meetings, Naruto-kun wanted to be with him. The one thing he always wanted was for Hito-oji to be proud of him. Since he became a member of the clan? Shino asked. Wasn't he always? Kurenai shook her head this time. No, Naruto-kun was once an orphan. Only by luck was he recognized by Hiashi-sama as a hyuga. After a test, it was shown Hito-san was his maternal grandfather. The man didn't even know he had a daughter, let alone a grandson, but he treated him like a son. Hi, Hito-jiji was the best a voice spoke up from the hall, revealing Naruto. Walking to the picture, he smiled as his eyes lingered on the man who raised him. I could never repay him for what he did for me, not even if he still lived. Turning to face the genin squad, he smiled a smile full of sorrow but also joy. That's why I have to finish my Tenseigan. To prove to him that I can follow through in my dreams. As he sat down on one end of the table, he looked at the boys who sat on one side. Dreams are strange. You set them, a goal to attain, and by completing them you open yourself to higher goals, but also affect the dreams of those around you directly or indirectly. Only one can be the Hokage at a time. Forming a new taijutsu style disrupts other styles. Creating an ninjutsu affects the ninja world. Bringing peace troubles those who profit from war. Every dream has instant and long-term ramifications that many don't see, but my eyes are cursed to see everything. The heirs were silent as he stirred his food in front of him with chopsticks. What are your dreams, Kiba-san, Shino-san? He wondered. The two ninja glanced at each other and back at him. Would it help if I told you mine? A nod from each person at the table was his response. Well, I want to make my Tenseigan and create a space-time fuinjutsu like the Yondaime. With Jiji's passing I know what my true dream is. I want to be the one to unite the Uzumaki back together. I want my family to be together for the first time in decades, the whole family together. Kiba looked into his food while Shino was expressionless as usual. Hinata sighed sadly and Kurenai frowned. Makes my dream of being a strong clan head seem small and selfish when you say that, the dog-like Nin intoned with a sad chuckle. That seems more of a goal anyways. I'll have to think about it more and give you a better answer, Naruto. He admitted. The others seemed to be of the same mind. Of course, Kiba-san. But no more sad stuff, let's just enjoy lunch, alright? He suggested, infecting the others with his smile. Then we can have that spar and I can beat you. Kiba grinned at that. In your dreams, Uzumaki. He replied back, digging into his yakitori with gusto. All in all, Kurenai smiled at her students bonding. It made her happy to see it. Hello to all of you. Team 11 looked at their sensei, nodding. Tomorrow is the moment of truth for all your training up until now. These last 6 weeks have been spent in preparation without any missions to distract you. I know you've all changed for the better since our last meeting, and this is the chance to prove it to the entire village. Pei coughed once into his palm, analyzing the 3 genin he had been assigned and smiled. They hadn't changed much at first glance. Daihi now had a second blade of wakizashi on his hip. Yukuma looked to have a little more muscle on her, and Naruto's eyes were still that bright red since Hito's death, but otherwise they appeared unchanged. The swordsman knew much better than to go off of simply that though. He had trained Daihi himself these past weeks with the boy's older sister and clan head of course, and knew just how much he had improved. Hyuga kept him posted on Naruto's improvements, though she remained vague in her reports. Yakumo. Her clan was rather secretive, but he knew she was determined to stay on par with her teammates in her own way. The exams are a tough trial, but I know you'll all get through it on top. All 3 of you came in as the top of your class in your preferred subjects. Now is your turn to show everyone just how skilled you are. I just know that Team 11 will hold 3 new Chunin by the time it's all over. He nodded to his genin, smiling softly at them. Today, there will be no training whatsoever. You need to make sure to prevent any injury that will affect the team from performing at your peak tomorrow. Hi, Sensei. The trio spoke as one, not missing a beat. The first exam will take place at the academy tomorrow morning. Make sure you are not late. I will be watching you as it unfolds, so do not fret about anything. I know you will all do wonderfully. With that, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves, the genin alone with each other. You guys train hard. Daihi was the first to speak, grinning tiredly at the others, who nodded. I learned a lot from the scrolls of Kurama Masamune, the last person to get the full bloodline of my clan like me. I learned some rather useful things in there, even some ways to help train my body using Jinjutsu, thanks to my bloodline. Masamune had the same problem with frailty, but he overcame it in a unique way. I just know you two will do extremely well. Naruto spoke coolly, a soft smile on his lips as he looked at his best friends. What about you, Rito? Daihi asked. What did you learn? The blonde smiled mysteriously, a mischievous glint in his eye. Now, that would be telling. The next morning, Team 11 arrived to the academy in time to see the Uchiha of their class expose the Jinjutsu over the second floor's door. Of course, this brought a sigh to their lips. I know that Sasuke is supposed to be a genius, and all but does his ego need that much stroking that he can't see an obvious trap when it's there for more intelligent ninja to take advantage of. Byakugan wondered. Well, his arrogance is only matched by my cousin's. Naruto explained. We'll just have to go on and see what we're up against. Let's try to stay more secretive than him though. Gaining 2 nods, Naruto led the way upstairs. Once more, they found the Uchiha in their way. Those bushy brows. Daihi wondered, seeing Sasuke and the green-clad boy with eyebrows resembling fuzzy caterpillars staring each other down. Naruto thought a moment before chuckling. If I recall, that is Niji's energetic teammate. I've seen him with my cousin and another genin, a Kunoichi, rather frequently around the village. I believe their sensei is Might Guy, the student of the man who helped my Jiji learn the Goken in order to create his Iwaken. This boy's name escapes me though. The 3 winced in sympathetic pain as the boy in spandex suddenly kicked Sasuke's chin, sending him skyward, and then jumped up. Before anything else could happen, a voice called out Lee. And the offending genin dropped to the floor, looking around while Sasuke fell flat on his face, still hurting. The rather large turtle Team 11 recognized it as a summon entered the hall with a man who looked remarkably like Lee, Might Guy. Lee, you know you are never to use that technique unless it is to protect someone precious to you. Lee bowed his head deeply in apology. I am sorry, Guy-sensei. Lee apologized. I became carried away in my spar with the youthful Uchiha. Guy looked stern before smiling brightly. See that you don't do it again. Holding his thumb up, Guy's teeth brightly shone, making Lee grin back, rivers of tears streaming down his face. Thank you, Guy-sensei. Lee. Guy-sensei. Lee. The 2 spandex-clad shinobi then wrapped each other in a manly embrace, causing the genin to look away. Of course, with Naruto's all-seeing eyes he couldn't. The void did help keep his emotions in check though, until it was over. He motioned his teammates to follow him, leaving a very confused Team 7, a very angry Uchiha, and a pair of very strange Goken users alone. Arriving at the doors to the class, Naruto pushed them open, allowing his friends within, before he let it close behind him. Without a single word, the trio walked inside until they heard someone speak. Yo, Naruto, over here. A follow-up bark from the speaker's Ninken told the 3 all they needed to know about who it was. Smiling, Naruto led the other 2 a ways to the side where Teams 8 and 10 were already gathered together. How troublesome, Shikamaru muttered, seeing the door open again, and before anyone could react Ino was already there on Sasuke's back. Sasuke-un, she spoke sultrily, piggybacking him tightly. Did you miss me? That off of him, Ino pig. Sakura shouted, causing Kiba and Shikamaru to cringe at the loudness. "Oh, shut it, billboard brow." Ino replied with her tongue stuck out at the pinkette. "Now I remember why you two are my friends, and not any of the other Kunoichi," Yakuma muttered, though everyone plainly heard it. Ino and Sakura had matching right eyes, both twitching uncontrollably. Seeing Hinata blush, fingers pressed together, Yakumo smiled to the brunette. "Oh, you're okay, Hinata-chan. Just not the loudmouth fangirls over there." Now, Yakumo-chan. That's not right at all." Daihi replied, making the two purr up at the thought someone was sticking up for them. "You forgot weak." This caused them to gain even more righteous fury. Sakura had a fist already formed, ready to slam it into the air. "You guys should quiet down." A new, unfamiliar voice spoke up behind the group. "Who are you?" Chaoji wondered, eating some chips the instant after the question was asked. The silver-haired genin smiled compassionately, though to the trained eye it was plainly fake. "My name is Ikushi Kabuto. I just wanted to warn you that you're attracting a lot of unwanted attention from other, more experienced ninja here. This will be my 7th exam, so I wanted to help out you rookies." "Are they really that difficult?" Daihi wondered. "Well, yeah. But thanks to all my times here, I've been able to collect information on all the ninja here. Is there anyone you'd like to know about?" The spectacled nin asked as he pulled out a deck of cards. Naruto stopped paying attention to the Konoha group as he felt a familiar signature behind him. Turning, he couldn't but help to smile as he saw Karen. "Karen-chan." The spectacled Kunoichi grinned as she looked him up and down. "Hello there, Naruto-kun," she replied, stepping a bit closer to him. The other genin were looking at Kabuto, so didn't really pay attention to them. "I'm glad I caught you before the exams. You know, even though we're from different villages, we don't have to be enemies." As the Redeed stepped into his personal space, Naruto couldn't help but feel his cheeks growing warmer. It certainly didn't help when she laid a hand on his chest, that sultry smirk never leaving her face. "You know we should help each other in the exam. Don't you think so?" The blonde swallowed but smiled. "All right, Karen-chan and Alliance, right." The Redeed smirked, nodding. "Exactly. 2 teams can accomplish more than one. I just know you'll pass this exam, but the next one is a survival one. Our teams can help each other pass to the 3rd exam, the tournament. I know you're the leader just like I am. So, what do you say?" Despite losing the void with Karen's sudden appearance, Naruto was still sound enough of mind to think over what she was proposing and nodding. "Yeah, we'll work together, Karen-chan." The Redeed smiled, making Naruto's blush deepen a shade. "Have fun, Naruto-kun. I'll see you there." With a nod, Naruto turned back around to see Kabuto on the floor with a bleeding eardrum and a ninja with some strange hold gauntlet wearing bandages all over his face, and a hit-ite with a music note on it above him. "Alright, brats, listen up. I'm Marino Ibiki, your proctor for the 1st exam. Any more unsanctioned fights and you'll be disqualified, got it, Odo?" The mummified boy nodded. "Now, take your seat so we can get started." Back with the Junin, they stood in an observation room with monitors showing the classroom the Chunin hopeful sat in from every possible vantage. Several of the Junin were making wagers on their teams with high payouts. Kakashi, Kurenai, Asuma, Guy and Hade each watched the screens in a small group. Kakashi was half reading and half watching, glancing at the screen showing Sasuke, Sakura and Sai every so often, though his sensei's son was also on the list of those he kept an eye on. Kurenai kept her eyes on both her team and Naruto. Asuma was watching the Inoshikacho trio, though the blonde his girlfriend constantly spoke of was not far behind them in his interest. Guy grinned brightly as his genin were easily passing this test, excited as he witnessed his student's cousin with similar skills. Of course, Hade watched his own team solely. "It seems all of our students passed the first part of the exam rather easily," Kakashi noted with his usual bored tone. "I expected no less from the students of my eternal rival," Guy exclaimed energetically. "Did you say something?" Guy groaned, holding out his fist. "Aren't you, Kakashi, and your hip attitude?" The other 3 mostly ignored the strange duo, watching the screens as some genin left the room due to Ibiki's psychological torture. On the other side of the room was a lone woman from Kusagakure. She had long flowing red hair with just a streak of white going down the middle, pale, violet eyes and pale skin. This woman wore a red yukata with blue trimming, black spirals along the edging with a white obi, keeping it tight around her waist. On either hip she had a katana sheathed, each in black scabbards. "Naruto-chan is doing just as well as I had hoped. Good job, Karen-chan. Now, as long as his team and your siblings get along, everything will fall perfectly into place. I just know it." She smirked infinitesimally at the thought. "I love it when a plan comes together. Hope you guys enjoyed your time."